Hello, ring ring.
Hey, how we doing?
Doing great. Can you just introduce yourself to the chat, kind of who you are, why they should care about what you have to say, and what your background is. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to play with audio levels to make sure that they can hear you okay.
Sure. Hey guys, I am Aero, currently the coach of Fusion University. I've been in the Overwatch scene, excuse me, for quite a while. Since pretty much since the beta, I've been uh, coaching Overwatch for about a year and a half now. I was a player before that. I do have a history in coaching and mentoring, and the background directing various internship programs, working in some traditional sports, um, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm super happy to be here. I think that what Jayne does here is super crucial to the Overwatch scene. It's great to see someone provide this kind of content and analysis for so many people. I think it's perfect and fits something that isn't currently done well outside of this channel. So
You flatter
definitely
me.
filling a hole.
You flatter me. Yeah. So, welcome, welcome. And first, congratulations on making it into the semifinals of North American Contenders. And unless I'm
Thank you.
misinformed, the semifinals for Contenders are going to be held in Poland, correct?
That's correct.
So, when are you going? Are you excited? What does the team think? Is this the first like road trip tournament? Not really a road trip, but how does the team feel about going to compete in Poland?
Sure. Everyone is super excited about it. We did have an opportunity for everyone to meet each other back in February. We met up in Philadelphia and got to see kind of all the Comcast side of Fusion and got to see Philly and all that kind of stuff. And it was a fun little tournament where we ended up picking up one of our guys who's currently filling in as a sub role. Um, and it was fun. So with Poland, I don't know if the dates have been announced yet, but it's coming in a few weeks. We'll be there, and yeah, we're excited to be able to have our Korean players on LAN with us
Yes,
finally.
absolutely.
Yeah, and I think everyone on our team, minus the tank, so our DPS and our supports have both played on LAN environment. Our tanks have not, so it'll be a fun experience for them. Um, so yeah, we're
And
we're super
do you know
excited.
why North American Contenders are being held in Poland of all places?
Well, I think that what they want to do is kind of merge the European and North American contenders for the finals to make it kind of a bigger event. So, and they did the same thing last year, but it was in North America. So the European teams all had to fly to North America and do the same thing that North American teams are now doing in Europe. So
Hmm.
I think that's kind of why.
Now, for the individuals who don't watch North American Contenders, can you give us a
Mhm.
little bit of a just a background on your team, kind of the characters on your team? I know you got Zachary and Elk and all those guys, but just
Mhm.
a little bit about your team, the people on it. I know Elk, who's a very popular individual around here, came on the stream probably
Yeah.
2, 3 weeks ago, so everyone knows who Elk is. But a little bit about your team, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so for our starting lineup right now, we have Beast Halo, who formerly played in teams like Tempo Storm. Kraken Lacken is our off tank player. He previously was playing for Toronto before Contenders started. And then we have for DPS our two main guys right now are Zachary. He was last year he was on Renegades, really good flex player. And then who Are You is currently playing our other role. He kind of ends up feeling like a Tracer, Genji, sometimes projectile kind of role. Known to as the Apex Season 2 MVP from Lunatic High. Incredible player, incredible guy. Then our sports are Elk, one in my opinion, one of the brightest minds in Overwatch.
Yeah, blew me out of the
It's
water. That guy's
yeah
insanely smart and talented. Wow.
yeah, I have a lot of fun talking to him just about strategy and stuff. So he and I think a lot alike. And then Alarm is our other main starting support player. Very very talented Zens, one of the best Zens in the world in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And then we actually have two subs, two guys that are seven right now. They're super young guys. Zerg, who is currently 15. Um, he plays occasionally for us, does some Widow stuff, but he's never been on a team before. We were actually the first time he ever scrimmed was with us, so we want to take our time with him and grow him, and he's mechanically insane, very gifted player. But we're working on him with the macro and the understanding of the game in a team environment, and that's kind of a similar situation with Round, or his name is actually technically our own pleb, but we call him Round. He is from Philadelphia, off tank player that is kind of filling a sub role that we're kind of doing the same thing with. So
Now, Zerg is 15, right? So he can't
Mhm.
play in the Overwatch League until he's 18, correct?
Correct.
So, you know, just by that account, you know, you're investing resources because you're an academy team, you know, you're affiliated with the Philadelphia Fusion, you know, and you
Hmm.
do have ties together. Is looking 3 years down the road for some of these players, you know, Element Mystic, two of their big star characters are 16. Is
Hmm.
looking 2 to 3 years into the future too far? Are these characters are like, you know, are these 15-year-olds going to be washed up by the time they turn 18? Is what do you think about looking that far into the future for a character or not a character, an individual's career?
Sure. So we built our team like this for a reason. So I don't, the other ages of our guys, we have two guys that are 18, two guys that are 17, three guys that are 16, and one guy that's 15. And
So
so
a
our
young squad
whole
across the whole spectrum.
exactly. Yeah, and so our whole reason for building like this was, one of the benefits that um, uh, Overwatch League teams get from having an academy team is that should a player get approached by an Overwatch League team, the home Overwatch League team has an opportunity to counter offer. And so,
Oh, that's very
looking
useful.
three years down the line, should whatever Fusion Overwatch League looks like, we'll have an opportunity to be able to look into picking up Zerg or something from in that regard. So that's kind of one of the whole reasons. It's like we're not just here to win contenders; we're here to grow players that are going to be Overwatch League superstars in the long run. And so our goal, and one of the reasons that um, one of my goals, one of the reasons that I believe they picked me up, and the way that I'm doing my coaching structure and everything is so that we can let these guys have long careers where they can grow and learn and learn how to adapt, so that when the guys, so the Zergs of the world that are 15 and playing now, that by the time they get to Overwatch League, as long as it's done right, as long as they're coached correctly and everything's structured correctly, they'll be incredible players. So, just as an example, who are you? Is 16 right now, and when he was 15, he was Apex Season 2 MVP with Lunatic High. We're looking for players like that to be able to grow and eventually, maybe be a part of Fusion in the long run.
Now, when we're talking about, excuse me, I got the hiccups. Um, and I completely lost my train of thought. I'm sorry about that. No, I lost it. We're gonna have to just move on to a different target because I lost my train of
Sure.
thought. Let's hear about more about you. Now we've heard about
Okay.
with grim reality and whatnot, transitioning from a pro player and the individual is very young, you know, 19, moving into a coaching
Mhm.
position from having his only relevant background being a pro player. Now, what is your background? Do you have a background as a pro player? Are you coming from a coach in a different esport, something like Violet did? Or did you start in Overwatch, work your way up the ladder as it will as a coach, and then you're basically homegrown Overwatch coach. What is your background?
Sure. So I actually started coaching and mentoring when I was younger. I did a lot of leadership things, from whether it was uh, being one of the leaders of like a kind of like a Boy Scouts type organization, to directing an internship program. I've always been very interested in helping people grow and learn, set goals, and become better for themselves, not just in esports. And it just so happens that I absolutely love esports. I was a raid leader in WoW at a young age. Doing those kind of things, and then I got into esports, the actual competitive esports side, with Dota 2. I was a player, and during those times, when Dota 2 was still in beta, during those times, coaches weren't common. It was rare to have people in esports be able to have someone that can help guide them uh, with how to become better. Just better by themselves, not even just as a person,
Hmm.
or not even just as a player, but as a person. And so when Overwatch first got announced, I jumped in right away as a player. I didn't really take it super seriously until the game fully launched, and then I played for a team that we were like top 30 in the U.S. We weren't that great, but it was a fun thing. I was a hit scan player, Widow. I was the time that I was at my Overwatch peak as a player, I was like top 500 before the leaderboard actually came out. So that's kind of the
Nice.
time frame we're talking about. But the reason I transitioned to coaching was a couple of reasons. So first of all, um, I worked a 9 to 5 job, so it was, you know,
I can sympathize
basically
with that
gone.
one.
Yeah, so I was gone for 9 hours a day, and then I'd come home and it'd be too late for me to make scrims and also be able to practice to keep up my mechanics, which is something that is so crucial as a player, especially a hit scan player. You need to be able to keep up your mechanics. So one of the things I could do for my job, I was an IT guy at the time, is I could watch VODs while I work. And so I, kind of was like, well, hey, I have this background and I have the ability to watch VODs and I love Overwatch and want to be in the scene. Why don't I start coaching? And so my very first team that I coached was actually a TESPA team.
Oh
I
yeah,
started
same for me actually.
with
I coached
yeah,
University of Calgary.
okay, yeah. I started with I knew somebody who knew somebody on Kansas State University. So we started there. I think we got into like we were one away from getting everybody money, and we got reverse left. It was real
Ah,
sad.
dang. Hopefully
But
not as
yeah, and then
heartbreaking as it was with Element Mystic, but reverse sweeps are never fun.
oh, the Elbe Mystic match was really interesting because I know kind of what it feels like for O2 Ardian, from my time in FNR GFE where no one's paid. It's kind of like this group of people that were left over that we got together and made this team that ended up, going to become Houston Outlaws for, the people who don't know most of the players did. And that feeling of reverse sweeping Elite Mystic kind of reminded me of when we made it to, quarterfinals or semifinals in Contenders last season. So, but yeah, I've been a part of a handful of teams,
Now, you
all the way
sound
from.
pretty attached. Like, it sounds very much like you're committed to the development of players, and
Mhm,
you're talking about the development of teams and players over so much
sure,
as like winning titles and championships. Now, most people see Contenders as kind of like a poaching ground or a hunting ground for new talent of both
sure.
players and support staff. Now, like Philadelphia Fusion affiliated with the Fusion University team, are you looking to stay with the university team, or if you did get, do you see this basically as a stepping stone into the Overwatch League?
Uh, don't get me wrong. I definitely love Fusion University and love what I do here. And the organization, Fusion as an organization, is absolutely fantastic. By far one of the favorite organization I've ever worked with. But I would, yeah, if it came to where Overwatch League was a thing, yeah, I would definitely take it. But, I think the development of players, while it's most needed where I'm at now, like the contenders side of things, it doesn't stop when you get into Overwatch League.
Absolutely not.
Um,
No.
so because the game's constantly changing and team dynamics are constantly changing, player development and working with a team, all that kind of stuff is very needed for teams to be able to work um, in the long run.
Now, on Reddit, the discussion for the like the World Cup committee stuff is coming up. Now, I know this is going to be a really awkward time for you since you are going to be committed to, performing the best you can during the semifinals and the finals at the land in Poland there. But your name has been floated around quite a bit as one of the potential coaches for the American World Cup team. Is that
Mhm.
something you're interested in doing? First, are you interested in doing that? The World Cup?
Absolutely, I would love to. Yeah, I would
Now,
love to.
why do you think people are considering you to be one of the front runners for that position, and who is your competition?
I think I'm being considered because I do have a pretty good history with the teams that I've coached. The teams that I've been in charge of most recently are, FNR GFE, which did very well, and then Fusion University, which currently, we're 18-1 in matches across the board, undefeated in contenders, and I do have a reputation with a lot of players that are in the top 150. There's 12 guys that I've spent a lot of time coaching are currently in the Overwatch League. And then I have the 8 that I'm coaching in contenders, and so that's kind of why I think I'm a pretty good choice for the World Cup team. And then I think my biggest competition, I think there's only 3 like head coaches that are actually American that are currently like really prevalent in the scene. That would be myself, Kai, and I believe DPay from Gladiators is
And Kai
American.
Kai was the coach for the American team last year, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Do you mind talking about the Dallas Fuel situation briefly?
Sure.
What
Um,
do you what is your take as a coach on the release of Kai Kai specifically? Not Rascal. Let's talk about what do you think about Dallas Fuel releasing Kai Kai?
well, so I don't know what Kai Kai's coaching style actually is. I've never worked with him. I've heard some stuff from players, a lot of good stuff. Now, like I said, I don't know the inner workings, but the way I view it is within an organization, the passion, the drive, all that kind of stuff flows from the head to the feet. And so Hastro, taking the stance that, hey, we're willing to make a change, whether it's the correct change, whether people believe it's the right change or the wrong change, it's their way of saying we're willing to take a step to try and change something. And so what Dallas Fuel is going to need right now, I don't know how the existing coaching staff is going to work, if there is someone there that can fill that head coach role. But what they need right now is someone that can rally the players and lead them through hell, because that's kind of what the players are going through right now.
Now,
They're in a valley.
Monte Cristo on oversight recommended that they bring in a coach, a well-regarded coach from traditional sports instead of somebody from the
Sure.
Overwatch scene. Do you agree that that would be the best sort of solution to fixing what's rotting in the House of Dallas, or do you think that is there somebody within the Overwatch scene who you think is up to the task of head coach for Dallas Fuel?
Well, I won't. Here's the thing. Within the coaches that are currently in Overwatch, from my perspective, and I'll exclude myself from this conversation, the coaches that I know, most of them are homegrown Overwatch coaches. They're esport coaches. They don't have the experience of rallying players um, through conflict resolution and figuring out that kind of thing. So I do think that bringing in someone that has that kind of background or has the experience with working with players or working with people in general is the way to go for Dallas Fuel right now. I do know that the coaches that are there right now are very good analysts. I don't know how they are with working with teams. So kind of one of those things where that's the way I view it is Dallas Fuel needs to do two things to bring this through. Okay, so first they need to find that coach that can, like I said, that can lead them through hell. But in doing so, they need to present a stance. In order to get that coach, they need to present a stance that says, we're willing to give control to this person, to let them have the job security and to be able to support them in the event that they push players and stretch players to grow and work as a team. Because in order to grow, growing doesn't come without growing pain.
Absolutely.
And if it's a situation where players have a lot of control over the roster, over the staff, coaches aren't going to be really interested in going there, because any good coach knows that there's going to be some kind of pushback, because in order to grow people, you have to push them outside of their comfort zone. And
Absolutely.
depending on the situation, I know, like I said, I don't know how these players work, if it is a situation like that. But if the players have the control, where if they're going to push back and the coach isn't going to get support, then no coach worth his salt is going to want to go there. So the two things is finding that coach and being able to support him in doing that.
Now, my next question is a two-part question here. So, the first question is coming from how now your team here is 18-1, I think you said. And now in every league, in every division, in every region, there's going to be a team that wins and a team that loses. How directly can you correlate the success or failures of a team with the coach that coached them? Is there a situation where a really good coach could have a team that goes 0-10? Could a really shitty coach have a team that goes 10-0? And if that is the situation, how do you distinguish between a good coach and a bad coach from the outside?
Sure. So that's it. There definitely are rare occasions where, let's say, a good coach gets put on a team that just fails, and whether that's, in my opinion, that usually isn't going to happen, because if they're a good coach, the best quality they're going to have is being adaptable, being able to understand players and people. The biggest thing about being a good coach, regardless of it, is if you are more analytically minded, or if you're more focused on teamwork and player development, the biggest thing a coach can have is being able to adapt and grow and learn and change. Everything's always constantly shifting in Overwatch. So if you can't change to meet what your team needs, then you're not a good coach. That's just plain and simple. So if you are regarded as a good coach and the team dynamic changes and you don't recognize that, then you failed as a coach. And whether or not you can say that it's someone who is was good previously and now isn't, or if they just failed in this regard, if they didn't understand, I'll leave that up to interpretation. But there are rare circumstances where it does happen. But I do believe that a lot of the success and failures of teams, is with coaches, because how you develop your relationship with players, with your in-game leaders, with your shot callers, with the guys who are there that aren't necessarily leaders but are mechanically insane. You need to have relations with all those players, and you need to be able to rally them together, to be able to work as a team, but also grow and adapt with the meta, to being good. So I do think that how teams work, how teams do, is largely correlated with the coach. And part of it, though, is if you are put on a team, now, like the rare circumstance talking about where a good coach does bad is if the coach is in it because they need to be in it for the money, and they're part of a team where if they didn't have a direct hand in picking the players and they're stuck with players that are not open to change, right, that will not grow, will not improve, that if everyone's just in it for the money, no one actually cares about improving and getting together and working together, that's a situation where a good coach might fail. But it kind of goes into the reasons why you're doing it for coaching. Hopefully all the coaches that are in Overwatch League now and in the future, they're going to be in it to do the best they can to grow players, that they're in it to coach, not to be in it for the money.
Now, last question before we move on to the actual review itself.
Sure.
Do you think that Kai or the failure of Dallas Fuel, for whatever reason was, in some way taints Kai as a coach? Is he going to struggle to find other jobs? He, of course, has previous successes with Envious and Team USA. Do you think that this singular failure with Dallas Fuel kind of taints him and is going to prevent him from getting picked up, or should prevent him from getting picked up by another team?
The unfortunate thing is I do think it is going to hurt his reputation. Whether or not it's justified, we may never know. But it is going to hurt his reputation. I hope that for the people that know him, that have worked with him, if it is someone that knows his style and that Kai is actually a really good coach, I hope that he does find a job and he has people that will support him in finding a job. But it definitely will be a stain on his reputation, and that's just something that it sucks, but he's going to have to overcome.
Okay, now the matches that we're going to be looking at today are the Mayhem Academy versus Fusion University. This was the quarterfinals in the Contenders playoffs, correct?
Correct.
Now, so when we're actually looking at this, you agreed to talk pretty openly about the strategies and whatnot because you prepared specifically for the Mayhem Academy. Can you talk a little bit more about how, as a coach, you went about preparing specifically for the Mayhem Academy? This is something that Wizard Young, New York Excelsior, talks about, that they prepare strategies for very specific teams in each time. So what are the steps? Who are the guys that help you out in preparing strategies for specific teams and not just practicing generic strats in-house?
Sure. So it's funny you mentioned Wizard Young. Young and I go back sometime. We actually... there was a time where I spent about 6 weeks with TSM, and the manager of TSM gave me this application and said, "This guy's looking to be an analyst for us. What do you think?" And it was Wizard Young. At the time, he was a streamer. Yeah, at the time, he was a streamer, and I looked at it. I looked at this application. I was like, I want this guy. I want to work with this guy. I think that he and I think very similarly. And so it's funny to see the growth. And when he got on Luxury Watch Red, I couldn't have been more happier for him. We keep in touch every now and then. But the way that we approach it, so in terms of making strategies for your opponents, it depends on, firstly, the most important things you have to understand the current foundation of your so with our foundation, we're still relatively new. I think we've been, everyone got officially signed about 3 months ago. So we're still, in my opinion, still relatively new. So I'm not going to do anything super insanely crazy that goes outside of our comfort zone right now. We're still working on foundation things where we're working on how we do our shot calling structures, our focus calling structures, our overall comps. We're still learning and growing as a team and how we do that. So in terms of counter-stratting Mayhem Academy, the things that we do are going to be, we're going to take the basic stuff we've worked on, and we're going to apply minor tweaks where we can exploit weaknesses of Mayhem Academy. So it's not going to be something where we do this crazy brand new comp that we've never played before. Maybe if it's a lesser team, we'll do that. But against Mayhem Academy, it's something where we're going to tweak, maybe where we position our supports or how we engage, who we focus before the fight actually starts, those kind of things.
So it is going to be a lot more like Boston playing against New York, where they ran the same dive composition and the same kind of style as they did before, but instead of Striker maybe going for support, Striker forces the duels with, say, Bjolby, or the dive target more commonly becomes Jonak. So instead of coming up with completely new strategies that you've never practiced before, you're tailoring the strategies and the roles within your compositions specifically based on what you think the strengths and weaknesses of the opponents are. Is that kind of what you're going with?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Well, dive is one of the most versatile comps out there, and right now there's in terms of composition, there's already multiple variants of how you run dive, and then within each variant you have different focuses, different setups, and a lot of different ways that you can approach it. So there's a lot of ways that you can exploit someone's weaknesses to make it work for your benefit.
Awesome. Any other, as we look through this VOD, is there anything specific that you want to just look or have the viewers look for as we view the 3 or 4 maps, depending on how much time we have?
Sure. In terms of starting analysis, and I'm sure you've covered this a lot, one of the things that we're always going to be looking to do at the start of every single fight is looking at A, where are the tanks positioned, B, where the support's positioned, and of course what the ult economies look like. So that's kind of what we'll do. In terms of some scouting notes that we had from Mayhem Academy before we actually start the VOD, we know one of the main things that we were able to exploit here against that, they do not have an extremely confident Widowmaker player. So that enables a lot of things that we can do on various points that we played on every single map. There's places where you can play Widowmaker, that a lot of teams are playing Widowmaker. And to be honest, we as a team, and I don't mean any BM by this, but we are not concerned about Mike Ye's Widow. And that's just kind of plain and simple where we're at.
Now, you're like Zachary plays Widow, of course, but so does Zerg here. Now I'm just going to tab in so that we can actually take a look at this first map here. Let me just bring up the guest tab. Now, Zachary and Zerg both are really good Widow player. If there was like a Widow specific map, would that be enough for you to sub in Zerg, or against a team like Mayhem Academy who doesn't have a Widow that actually provides any sort of threat? Would you just keep Zachary in for the flexibility in case you did need to swap?
Well, so to address why Zerg isn't in here specifically, one of the reasons why Zerg isn't playing is because he's not going to be able to attend Poland with us for other reasons. So I want to give Zach as much time as we can. Now, if it's the situation in the future, theoretically, Zerg and Zach have different Widow styles. Zerg is a very cocky Widow player right now.
Yeah, he flanks like a motherfucker. God damn, I hate playing him in ranked is the worst.
It's funny because Zerg will grapple up and take the duel every single time and probably win it, because he's just he's very cocky in the way that he plays his Widow, which is fine. But Zach offers a lot more versatility in the other comps that we can play in our fallbacks and our plan B's, C's, and D's, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So those are kind of the reasons why we're playing Zach right now.
Now, you've got the screen shares working on your end?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So as we're rolling out here, you're going to be rolling out with the Lucio. Elk is going to speed boost and then swap to Mercy, I assume?
Correct. Yeah. Okay. So pause it.
Yes.
Pause it for just a moment.
And we'll pause on the swap. Pause on the swap. Okay. There we go.
Okay. So going into it, there's a couple things that I want to set beforehand. So firstly, like I said, we know they're not going to be playing Widowmaker here, which is actually pretty common on this point. A lot of people are playing Widow Junkrat. So we thought that they were going to be playing either Soldier or McCree, most likely Soldier. What we didn't know is if they were going to be playing Hog or Diva. Now, the hog or diva, once we identify that, kind of that chooses um, that lets us know how they're going to use their Arisa pulls, and kind of how their tank pressure is going to look on point. So we're going to take this Widow because we know that Zach can be aggressive and he can be cocky without the risk of getting sniped. His biggest risk is going to be the Zenyatta, or if he's close enough, it'll be McCree or Junket or Diva flying at him. But our goal is to not let Zach be in that position and to let him get a proper angle. So the way we roll out here and the way we use our shields are actually very specific. So when we look at this first fight, this is one of the ones that, so I haven't done like a full deep analysis with the team yet. We're actually on break right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've reviewed Nepal a bit. The other maps I haven't done quite as deep, so I'll talk a little bit more in advance on this map. So one of the main things you're going to see in our opening is that I told Who Are You to focus just the shield here, because what I wanted to do is blow up the shield to maximize A, Zachary, since he's not contested. B, we're going to use our halts to just clump rather than try to pull off the map or do like above shield hook. And C, to maximize alarm and Who Are You spam. So
now
that's the opening.
Two questions. The first one being, you said that you expected Soldier. With McCree being so much more commonly used and providing more threat against like Tracer Sombra comps, and we just finished watching Korean Contenders where on this exact map we did see the Sombra. Why would you expect the Soldier on Sanctum instead of the more commonly picked McCree? Is it because of Mayhem Academy's hero pools?
Yes, specifically because of Mayhem Academy, and the way that I know I've seen Mike Gay and ZZA play for a long time now, and it was just kind of something we were expecting. They're going to be running some kind of hit scan plus Mercy. We knew it was possible they'd play McCree, don't get me wrong. We just kind of expected the rollout to be Soldier and for them to want a hard focus tank.
Now, second question, Zachary here. Since you had told Who Are You to focus the shield, is Zachary going to be assisting with breaking the shield or taking a separate angle to try and threaten?
So to open, he will, like, the way that we kind of orchestrated it was, I want him to, like, he's going to stand on the little ledge so that he has an angle. And then everyone else is going to focus shield. So he's going to have an angle first. And then once the initial shield rotation is done, depending on if they go aggressive or if they back off and try to hide, will depend pretty much how Zach rotates. So if they're expected to hide, what we're going to do is try to get more shield pressure and then rotate Zach to the left afterwards. So that way we can, they're concerned about us breaking shield and the frontline pressure. And while they're concerned about that, Zach's going to have an angle.
Awesome. Let me know if you want to pause.
Sure. Watch the opener here. So this is where Zach kind of sets up right here, which is something that you generally don't do as a Widow. So go ahead and pause real quick right here. All right, so the first Arisa pull, you didn't really see it from Mayhem Academy, but if you have a Diva, you should be expecting that most Arisas are probably going to be trying to pull off the map. And so it happened kind of in the corner in the bottom there.
Yes.
And so we know, if you've seen how the Arisa pull functions on this map, it's really cheesy, and I hate it.
We've explored it many times, and we're hoping. Didn't Blizzard fix it in the most recent patch? I thought it was in the patch. I'm not sure if it's actually fixed, but yeah, we've gone over how buggy Halt is specifically on this map. Yeah. You don't have to explain that one to most of the viewers.
Yeah, so that's why our tanks are kind of favoring the left side. And Zach's taking this angle right now because we know that they're not going to have a Widow. Because if you're from the other team's perspective, Zach's head would be wide open. So if there was a Widow, he'd be able to just sit behind shield and snipe him. So we go for first shield break, and then our tanks are going to take pressure. Now, one of the reasons why shield break works well against Diva Arisa is because Diva now has to use Matrix to protect during the shield downtime, which then enables the spam for the next shield rotation, because we want to desync their Matrix and their shield rotation to where they can't use their Matrix to either protect from
the length of the shield's duration.
Or exactly. So so after this, you're going to see Zach rotate to the left.
The way that the way that we kind of talked about the Arisa Diva versus Arisa Hog matchup is that the Arisa Diva has the matchup basically within about 12 meters, and for the first two shields. But on the second, like first shield, the team with the Orisa Diva seems to have the advantage. Second shield going down, that Diva is going to be low on resources and it's going to be pretty even. And if it ever gets to third shield or beyond, the team with the Hog should end up winning for sure. So if the team with the Orisa Diva is certainly going to feel a lot more pressure to actually get something done. Again, only 2 seconds of defense matrix. They can block a large amount of spam with that defense matrix, but only for 2 seconds. So the first shield, advantage to the Diva. Second shield, it's kind of neutral. And then any shield past that, advantage to the team with the Hog.
Yep, exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. Now, in looking at Mayhem's comp right now, running Junkrat McCree, they do end up bringing out other maps. And I'm pretty sure they're doing this because they've seen us play dive on this map. And this is largely a comp that's trying to counter dive and counter
this is the classic anti-dive comp. It's to a T. That's what it is.
Yep. So yeah, we can probably hit play.
Let me know if you want to pause. So you do manage to take that, and then your shield breaks extremely fast as well, since they have the Zenyatta, McCree, and Junkrat. So neither team can really take pillars here with the large amount of spam. So I assume that both teams are just going to slowly transition on the point.
So pause and go back about probably about 5 seconds. Right when we see their Orisa go to point, we want to pause it.
Okay. This is alarm being alarm, isn't
it? Right now. Yeah. So one of the advantages of taking this flank is now the separation. So we have tank pressure on point. Their shield and matrix are desynced, and everyone on their team except for their McCree is now huddled in the back right, trying to hide from Widow, which is something that we don't have to worry about. Our biggest threat is dying to Junkrat spam.
Yep.
So our goal now is, you can see the Discord on Orisa, is we want to blow up this Orisa while Zach zones pretty much everyone looks for a pick. So Beast is gonna rotate to point, and we're gonna rotate our Hog to point, and then we're gonna hard focus shield in Orisa, and everything's gonna be entirely focused on blowing up those tanks. So we
Did you say you're only rotating your Hog to point, not your Orisa as well?
No. We're our Orisa's going, and we're rotating our Hog to point.
Okay.
So we're rotating our tanks and hard focusing Orisa.
Cool. Shield goes down. Alarm gets that right click. Looks like some damage boost from Mercy was in there too.
Yep. So now we have tank pressure on point. They're backing off, so we can set up.
At this point in time, are you expecting the Mayhem Academy to swap off Orisa? It's because, especially on Sanctum, in the Orisa versus Orisa matchup, it's way easier to hold than it is to retake. So is it something that you've kind of prepared your team for, to expect the dive switch here? Once you've actually taken this first point and you are playing this composition, what are your initial actions?
So the first thing as a defense that we need to do, and we were slow on this, which when we review, I'm going to get on them about this, is we were very slow to set up our next fight. And so that is something that we'll talk about. But if you do lose the point, the whole idea behind Orisa, Hog, Junkrat, Widow is that it puts so much pressure on the pre-engagement part of the fight. That if you're on a comp that has to set up, you take away that first step, it's going to make it 100 times harder to actually get your comp to work. So I do think that Mayhem should have swapped. We do have it in the back of our minds that it is a possibility that teams will swap. I do think they should have. I don't know what their confidence looks like on dive on this map, if they've ever practiced it, or kind of what their thought process is. It could be like, hey, let's give it one more try before we actually swap. But they ended up staying on it pretty much the whole time. And they did cap it from us once, which we can talk about. But I do think that teams should be expecting to swap if you don't have ults or some way that you can even it out without having the opportunity to set up.
Okay.
So we should have already been moving to point, or moving to pillars right now. This is a very, very slow rotation. Our shield
doesn't even look like
useless
Kranken's
on
moving.
point.
There he's going.
So very, very slow. And so here, this spam, this rotation by them is kind of interesting. We're going to pause it here in a couple seconds. Go ahead and pause it now. In going down here, you're very, very much limiting what your Junkrat can do. his effectiveness is going to be entirely on point. So our goal from pillars right now, once we see this rotation, is let's do the same thing. We're going to hard focus shield, hard focus tanks, and try to get them to stay in that choke, and just try to capitalize on them not having good sight lines and good abilities. We can actually spread out. In this scenario, our comp can spread out and use the pillars as LOS. We have a lot more sight lines. It's a lot easier for us to spam them than it is for them to spam us. So we can throw our tanks on point and rotate without too much threat, because the rest of our backline can spread out and spam. It is very hard though to rotate your tanks in this comp, but because they're all 6 down here and we already have positions up top, we can spam them and take our time to get there. So they go ahead and play it. We're going to play it for
Before
a couple
we
seconds.
play, though, you said like as soon as we see this rotation, our goal or our actions are these planned? Do you have plans for each and every single possible attack route from the opponent, or is this something that you just trust your team to know what to do based on the attack route of Mayhem Academy? So, did you ever like plan it out in Scrim, saying if they go Cubby or Horseshoe, you do this?
So the way that we approach it is we make sure that we have a base understanding of how this comp can function. Now, I think there's a million different scenarios, a million different ways that you're gonna have to, expect. And so I don't think it's possible to know every single move your enemy's gonna make, because if they're smart, they're gonna be unpredictable. But what I expect of my team is that we have a base understanding of the comp that we're playing, so we know how to capitalize. And then on top of that, I put a little more pressure on our in-game leader, the one who is the default for making calls. I can talk about how we approach that, but Elk kind of becomes our default. And so I put more on Elk to know the if-thens. So if this, then this. And that is largely what Elk and I talk about a lot individually, and a lot of what I expect of him. And Elk, he's very good about being able to know these things and keep them in the back of his mind. The way our team dynamic kind of works is anyone has the ability to call for an ult play if they see it, and then it's kind of up to the supports to tweak it and make it the best it can possibly be on the fly. And so that's where I work with Elk a lot individually. That's kind of what our one-on-ones end up being a lot, is more understanding, from the comp, how do we take the basis of what's good and make it great? And so that's kind of where he needs to be good about the if-thens. And so in this scenario,
go ahead, I'll let you finish.
Sure. So in this scenario, this was kind of more Beast's main concern is how do we make sure that we control point and pressure point, and Elk's concern is how do we win the fight. So in this comp, when we see this, in individual talks and in working with the team and in VOD review, all that kind of stuff plays together where, all right, we know this is a bad situation for them, let's capitalize on it. And so I hope that answers your question and how we kind of approach.
Yeah. Now, one kind of follow-up question there. You were talking about one-on-ones with Elk. Now, do you ever find it challenging to instruct a player like Elk or coach them? Or instead of working on game knowledge, you work on something else where they might be lacking? Or just a general question, because Elk is, again, known for being one of the smartest guys in Overwatch. Do you find it challenging to coach a player like that?
No. Here, the thing that I always establish, the very, very first thing that in order to be an exceptional player in Overwatch, you have to be teachable. Okay, that has to be the first thing that you do. Teachable and adaptable. And if you're too prideful to be taught, then you're not a good. And that's just it. I kind of have this philosophy of like, there's 3 main things that, as a player, you need to. I'll save that for later. We can talk about it later. But to answer the question about Elk specifically, a lot of it is I want to enable my players to make sure that they have a voice and feel heard every single time. So even whether it's someone with incredible knowledge like Elk, or if it just happens to be someone else who maybe is more of the mechanical guy who doesn't really spend a lot of time looking at macro stuff. I want to make sure everyone has a voice and it's heard within the teams outside of Scrim. So I always encourage players to do their own analysis, do their own reviews, construct their own if-thens. And when we come together and do one-on-ones like with Elk, I always try to leave them with like some kind of flashcard or something tangible so that they can review it later and then improve upon it. The thing is with coaching in Overwatch, coaches aren't there when the maps happen.
No.
They're not. The only thing I can hear when this is going on is their comment, and that's I can't see it. The stream's on a delay. Even in Overwatch League matches, the coaches can only hear their comms, and I need to make sure that my players think like me and have a thought process like me, so that I can basically be in the game without having to be in the game. And so that's one of the ways that I do that, especially with Elk, is we'll exchange ideas all the time. If he has something that he wants to do or try, I am always open to him. I won't ever like shut him down and make him feel like what his idea is dumb. We'll always look at the pros and cons and look at it logically, separate emotion from the argument. It doesn't matter who's right, it matters what's right. And so we come together to try to find that, both from a coach to player and even as a team all together. It's all about what's right, not who's right as a team. And so that's kind of like the foundations of in coaching. You shouldn't ever be in a position where even if the player technically knows more than you, if that's kind of where you're at right now, that's fine. Come together, and being a leader isn't about knowing everything. It's about making the right things happen.
That's awesome insight. Thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you'd like to share before we keep watching?
So there's actually a window coming up where our tanks get really aggressive, and there's a big opportunity to punish Kraken. Now, one of the other things that one of the baseline philosophies, I call them like little philosophies of things that we can always exploit, is attention. So I view attention as a resource, especially in a first-person.
Attention as a resource.
Attention as a resource, especially in a first-person game. Okay, what you can see and what you know is very limited, and you're reliant on your team to fill in the blanks, right? So if we can spread out, take attention, manipulate attention, we can capitalize on someone not being able to make a play. So one of the reasons why spreading out in this comp, while it's not usually ideal, is ideal in this scenario, and particularly more ideal in dive scenarios, is you can pull someone's attention, whether it's a support or a McCree, and then use it to bully someone else. And so there's a situation where Mikey A's attention isn't on the tanks, which is kind of what this comp, that's their win condition, right? Is to be able to take down someone that's mid-range. And right now our tanks are the only ones that are going to be mid-range, unless you hope that Moore gets a pick or something. But with the McCree, we don't have a diva, so your flashbang is totally free. They should be trying to abuse Kraken and flash him when he's trying to heal. And so you'll kind of see that come up. You can go ahead and play it.
Okay, let me know when you want to pause.
So here we're kind of spreading out, and our tank's coming to point now. So here in a couple seconds, we'll pause it, right, give it now. So right here, Kraken is getting low. He'll be low in a moment. And we have everyone very spread out on our screen. So you can see like Junkrat's on stairs, Arissa's to the left, Kraken's right on point.
Widow's at Mega.
Widow's at Mega. Like that's the whole idea, is we're going to try to split them and hard focus someone. And usually it's going to be whoever the Discord target is. Alarm's very good at picking discords and changing discords on the fly with what's needed. And so Kraken's job right now is just to be the biggest distraction in the world. And if they don't shoot him, then he needs to capitalize. So depending on where their attention is, depends on who has priority in getting a kill. So right here, Kraken gets low and heals, and Mikey A turns and doesn't actually capitalize on it with the flash. So we can play it.
Now, why would Mikey not have flashed the hog there?
So go ahead and pause it. The main reason, the main reason why I think that he didn't flash was because they're very concerned about the Widow right now. Zen was shooting him. Mikey gets low because he gets body shot by the Widow there at the very end. Mm-hmm. And he does, like, it's one of those where we thrive in chaos and we try to create chaos. It's kind of one of those things. And
is that something that you can coach, is how to thrive in chaos?
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay.
Absolutely. So, and that comes down to a lot of like foundation and understanding basic principles of Overwatch that we can talk. It'll be easy to talk about in when we're on dive comps on Hollywood. I think is probably the best case scenario. for us to talk about. But the whole thing is that we want to make them uncomfortable in this room, and this room is very uncomfortable for this comp against what we have. So I think Mikey just missed it because he's really pressured right now. That's my best guess. But that was their window, was if they flash Kraken while he's trying to heal and then hard focus Kraken, that's how they win this fight. Because they need to get out on point. They need to get more value out of their Junkrat. Now, Junkrat did build a tire here because he was hitting tanks, but they're not able to finish it off because they're not able to utilize the flash correctly, not able to utilize their CC correctly. Diva's playing so incredibly passive. I mean, he's only at 38% ult charge. So it's kind of one of those where, spreading out and making them think about 5 different things at once is something that we can capitalize on.
Now, when you said that Kraken on the point, healing himself, and then getting flashed, that's the enemy's win condition. Is that Kraken Lincoln's mistake that could have been capitalized on, or was that part of this? Because you're not talking about Kraken Lincoln as making a mistake here, even though you're recognizing that is Mayhem Academy's win condition. So why is what Kraken Lincoln doing not a mistake, despite being it also the win condition for the Mayhem Academy?
It's not a mistake because we want to, so it's kind of one of those where whether or not it's a mistake is technically, is it a mistake? Yeah, it is, because he shouldn't have healed right out in the open. Yes, technically it is. But one of the whole points of how we address fighting on the point here is I want Kraken to be the biggest bully in the world on the point. I want him to be in your face. And if that means that he dies while we're able to capitalize on the angles and find a pick elsewhere, that's fine. I'm okay with that. Now, is it technically like giving them an inch, maybe they take a mile? Yeah. But with the strength of our team and the way that we're spreading out and capitalizing on their attention, is it something I'm willing to risk? Yes, and I'm completely okay with how we approached it. Is it a little nitpicky that Kraken is in their face healing? Yeah, it is, but I'm not. It's not something that I'm going to be overly critical about.
Okay, shall we keep going?
Yep. All right, so they end up getting Mikey. That was a good heads up on the tire coming. And so Zach doesn't even have to hit shots for us to win, since we have so much pressure on point and they're so spread out. One of the big strengths of Orisa is that the pressure that they provide is very one direction. So if you spread out and you have to manipulate it, if you don't have a hog, it's very hard to capitalize on multi-directional fights. So Zach didn't even have to hit headshots or get picks. He just had to pressure for our others to thrive here. So this is where we kind of mess up. So here in just a moment.
Has the mistake happened yet, or do you want me to play it?
No, not yet. Go about now. Pause it. All right, so there's 2 ways that we should be approaching this fight. One of 2 ways. And I like to give my guys a little flexibility to determine which one they think is best in the moment, and that's usually on Elk or Elk and Beast in this comp. And that's either A, we need to make it a one-directional fight as well, because they did swap to Widow. Now, granted, we're not overly concerned. Like I said, we're not overly concerned about Mikey's Widow. They probably just swapped to it because they feel pressured by our Widow because we're playing very bully style Widow. We either needed to all rotate and force them to fight,
rotate where?
In a one directional.
Rotate where?
So this corridor where Mayhem's facing.
So the catwalk, you would have rotated to catwalk away from pillars, or am I misunderstanding?
So yeah, like I said, there's 2 ways we can do that. So one way is to rotate to catwalk. I assume catwalk is the direction they're facing now.
Yes, that's correct.
To rotate and make it one dimensional, and then Zach can either flank or we can play to build our tire. We have ults and we can do that. Alternatively, the other way is we stay on pillars and we do the same thing that we did, our original rollout strategy of hard focus shield. And then once we have pressure advantage, then we can, take our angles and make it, make it work and find something. But the thing is, Beast rotated early to do the option 1 and everyone else did option 2. So, that's something where Beast and I will talk we'll all talk as a team and say, okay, what did you see? No, well, I don't want to sound like I'm going to reprimand Beast for this. It's something where like I want to know what Beast was thinking in this rotation, so that we can either adapt as a team, or we change and we figure it out together. So it's one of those where we kind of were in the middle of two different strategies and didn't commit to one or the other and got split, and they it just happened that they capitalized. Whether them capitalizing on it was intentional or not, it's one of those things where we need to fix this for future thing. So
Keep playing.
you can go ahead. Yep.
Let me know when you pause.
Here, Beast is super low, and right here, boom, I believe he actually throws his shield on point, yeah. And he gets discorded and blown up because, like I said, we lost our shield rotation pressure there from him moving early. So this fight's, they capped point, which is not very good for us, but we kind of make it work in the chaos. This is what I'm talking about by us. We thrive in chaos.
Now, what specifically about this, like this chaotic fight, made it work out for you? The Riptire, of course.
So a couple things. So here in just a moment, we'll pause right now. Pause. So Elk either didn't know where Mikey was, or he has the biggest stones of every Mercy I've ever seen. Because he literally flies to point.
Why not both?
Yeah, hey, it could be both. He flies to point to try to 1v1 this diva and hopefully get a res on Roadhog while Mikey's shooting. Now, Mikey doesn't hit his shots, and it works out for us because we're able to then recognize that we're in a 3v, currently 2, almost 3, and our tanks should get here at the same time. We're going to have numbers, and we're confident in fights where it's a 3v3, 4v4, 5v5, whatever the case is. We're confident in those just in general.
Now, Elk's actually in the chat saying that he did see Mikey, but he felt that he needed to take the fight and get the res in order to win the fight overall.
There you go. See, like I said, now that's something that he and I will talk about later on what we think was the right call. So that way in the future, everyone will be on the same page about it. So I'm not going to say whether or not it's the right call. It's a very ballsy call. The way I like to view it is, a lot of times calls aren't necessarily good or bad. It's just a call that can work if the situation's and so in this case, it's a very aggressive play to try to res the hog and get advantage quicker.
Chad is thinking that Zachary's walls had something to do with whether or not Elk thought it was safe enough to do that.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely should know that Mikey's there. I don't know if I'm curious. Well, since Elk's here, I guess I can just ask him.
That'll be about a 20-second delay on him answering, but
okay, yeah, then I won't. So, I mean, he had to have known, I guess, with the walls. So yeah, but going for the hog res doesn't the reason why I think he didn't know is because he doesn't end up going for the hog res. He ends up going for the Junkrat res.
Oh, does he? I don't even see the Junkrat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The Junkrat is about to die, and he dies in Cubby.
Oh, okay. So, does he die to Mikey? Let's play. The Venom.
He dies to mine. Yeah. So he ends up hopping over and rezzing, "Who are you?" And then while Mikey's trying to hit shots in Cubby, well, he takes that shot and then he turns and shoots Cubby, and Zach kind of takes advantage here.
Nice.
And takes him out there. So now we have our tanks back. Well, Kraken's just getting back. Beast has been there for a little while, so his first shield is already done. And now we can take pressure on the point because Mikey's gone, and we can now not have to worry about Zach being pressured, and we can just pressure and win the fight on a normal basis. And so now it's 10% left. At this point, we can just go forward and pressure them. They don't have any heroes that are going to speed to point, except for maybe Diva, but she just respawned, so we know it's not an option.
Yeah, so you're taking the fight in the suboptimal location just to make sure that they can't touch.
Yep, exactly.
Wow. After an hour, we made it through one Koth round. Nice.
Yeah.
Chat's really enjoying the in-depth. I think that you're the most detail-oriented guest we've ever had on. So Chat is really enjoying this. I must
cool.
Thank you for. Please don't feel like you're being too verbose. Chat is loving this right now.
Good. Good. Yeah, so there was you said a tweet before where a lot of people don't recognize what the target audience is. Um, if you do feel like I'm too deep and not explaining or taking like
Like I was
understanding the
talking about the
depth.
VOD reviews that I do, where I review like plats and GMs and whatnot.
Okay,
When
okay,
we're
that's
when
fair.
we're reviewing Overwatch League, I'll try and make the Overwatch League stuff more accessible to the casual viewer. But when we're doing contender stuff, we want the meat and potatoes. Go full bore.
Okay.
The people who
All
are
right,
here
cool.
watching a contenders analysis really care about Overwatch.
Okay, cool, yeah. All right, so going into Village, recently tanks and like triple tank Reaper type comps have become very prevalent.
Hmm.
A lot of teams are kind of going back to this now. One of the things that I don't agree with, and go ahead and pause it right now, one of the things that I don't think Mayhem Academy should have done was play Zarya here. Now, the reason that they do play Zarya, I'm guessing, is because they're expecting to for us to match them in tanks. And so the bubble would give their Rhine more opportunities to swing and build shatter. Whereas if you run a Hog instead, Hog is more versatile, and Hog can beat dive comps if he hits his hook.
Yes. Now, so you're saying that Zarya is they're running Zarya because they're expecting you to run the same triple tank composition that has become basically meta on Village, right?
That is what I'm guessing. That's what if putting myself in their shoes, that's what I would like. My best guess is why they're running Zarya instead of Hog.
Okay. Now, why are you running Somber Tracer Dive on a map that is not meta for? We're not going to say it's not meta, but there are not a lot of other teams that are running Somber Tracer on Village in particular.
Mm-hmm.
So
Three reasons.
why did you run it here?
Okay, yeah. So three reasons. The first one is that a we're if you've ever watched us, we've played a lot of dive, and we're extremely confident in dive in current contender.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of contenders teams don't know how to deal with it and don't know how to exploit it. And a lot of the times where we lose is because we overextend or make a mistake. Now, the second reason is in history's past, when triple tank was the go-to comp, dive overtook it, and there was a couple reasons for that. Firstly, it's a very fast comp, and it's very easy to, like I mentioned before, manipulate attention. Elk just messaged me about the res on crack.
Oh,
The res on.
he's trying to make sure he doesn't get the belt.
So dive can work because it manipulates attention, like we talked about before. With Zen and proper discords, your tanks have effectively 30% less health if you're, focusing correctly. And then you also can build ults very fast. And Sombra is very good against clumping comp. So the way that we're going to go about doing this is we're going to spread out. We're going to take our time, and our engagements need to happen when their comp is in transition. Because in order to make this work for them, they need to play a very short range game and win the brawl. Where we want to hit them when they're moving and not in an ideal position. And to do that, we have a couple ways that we have to make it work. So firstly, A, we need to take our time, find the right engagement. B, we need to make sure we're focusing our discords correctly. And C, we need to make sure that we're rotating ults correctly because we're going to build ults very quickly. Now, one of the things about them not having Hog is our supports are not going to be pressured at all if our supports are positioned correctly. So this comp enables Alarm to go wild because he's not going to have to dual tracers at all. He's just going to be able to shoot tanks, and Alarm is very good at hitting shots.
Yes, he is. Now, Elk's job, like one of the main purposes of running a Lucio Zen, is that the Lucio protects the Zen. He's the peeler, the protector, boot people away, speed the Zen out. How does Elk's playstyle change when Zen does not need protection?
So his first priority should always be to make sure Zen is in the right location. So a lot of Elk and Alarm working together is, Elk is going to set up Alarm. We'll usually speed him to an area, make sure Alarm's set up, and then Elk can make a choice. Depending on how Mayhem Academy plays, if they're going to speed into us, then he needs to stay with Alarm. because Alarm's going to have to rotate, and we'll want that speed to rotate to match their speed. If they're playing slow and expect us to come into them, Elk can play more aggressive and try to isolate a target with Boop. Since there's no Roadhog, he can go for aggressive boops and not get punished like you would with a Roadhog. So that's kind of the way that we viewed it. Going in, it's what we expected from them. And you'll actually see that exact thing happen here in just a moment. And we actually kind of make a mistake, and it delays our point capture a little bit. So does that answer your question?
Absolutely, yes. Okay, let me know when
So
you
go
want to
ahead.
pause.
Yep. So they're going to go into stables, which is what we expect. So we're going to pause here in just now. All right. So two things happened here. All right. So firstly, we went for this extremely cocky boop play. We wanted to try to boop someone off the map while they're in this stable.
Okay.
And the only reason we can do that is because they don't have a hop. And that's a condition that we recognize as a team. Like, all right, let's go for it. Now, where we messed up is that Kraken stayed too long, and so so Kraken staying too long. It could have been a couple of different things. That's something that we'll talk about and figure out, like what was the idea, because it may not be the case that in us looking at this, Kraken had the wrong idea. It could be that he was going for something that it may not be as easily seen with the views that we have. So to start off, the way that we did it is firstly, who are you took the attention of the Reaper right away. So a Reaper just turned around and is about to fire its first shot at our Lucio Diva. So who are you took attention to the side, and then we tried to capitalize it on the other side. And so that's the first one. And then Kraken stays a little long and gets low. And so that actually delays our window of opportunity. So you can go ahead and play it through here.
Just before we play this through,
Sure.
I just want to talk about the thought process of engaging here. Now, they've got a Reaper and a Reinhardt, and you're engaging in a very tiny room instead of playing it a little bit slower, letting them take the position on the point, maybe set up the crossfire with the Tracer and the Sombra. Other than the cheeky boop play, why would you be so insistent on engaging this early?
Well, the goal here isn't to make it a full-on engage. The whole point is just to get Elk a chance to boop and then get out.
Oh, so you're not hard engaging here. You're like, Kraken's coming in to DM Elk so he doesn't get fucked. Who are you here to draw the attention off? Because attention is a resource. I took notes. And then you'll pull off, and if it doesn't work, then just wait.
Yep.
Okay, that clears up. It was not clicking in my head. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay.
Let me know when you want to pause.
Sure. So here, Kraken actually stays a little too long, gets low, and then Beast kind of just throws a shield to help. Now, pause it right now. So because we stayed longer than we were supposed to, we now don't have our bubble. We have a half-health Diva, and we can't engage when we want to. We want to engage before they're in point and when they're not in stables. So while they're rotating to point, that's our ideal window where we can isolate someone. And by isolating someone, we have a couple options. Either A, we boop with Lucio, B, we boop with Diva, or C, we have a well-placed Winston bubble to isolate it. And then we capitalize on Discord and multiple angles. So our tanks are going to start up top. Who are you going to be on one side? Zach's probably going to be on another. This is kind of the style that we want to play against tanks, is manipulate attention and capitalize on someone being isolated. So because all this happened earlier, that we kind of took too long on our play in the stables, now we can't execute in our ideal window, and we have to wait a little long.
You have to spend longer stabilizing.
Yeah, and then it just so happens that Who Are You ends up building his ult and gets an unlucky recall and kills himself with his pulse bomb. So
cool. Let's play it through.
Go ahead and play it. So here we wanted to engage right there. That was our ideal engage window. So now we just have to take our time, and our win condition now is don't die and build ults. And so you can see, like, Who Are You was just at 30% 5-10 seconds ago. He's already almost at a pulse bomb. Beast is already almost at primal, and then right here the unlucky recall kills himself. So now we have to wait. So we're gonna get out and just wait and take position.
Now we're seeing a lot of more This is just like a kind of a sidebar here, but we're seeing a lot more
Sure.
Korean type teams, both in the Overwatch League and in Korean contenders, fight through first picks. So um, it's becoming more common, even on maps like Hanamura Attack. Korean teams who lose one of their attackers are still fighting through this 6v5. So, do you have any idea like why we're seeing teams do that more often? And here, if your win condition is build ultimates, would you do a hard reset or would you try to keep building your ultimates while Who Are You is coming back from spawn? So, kind of a 2 point uh, question.
Sure. So we'll start with this specific instance. Um, I don't want to hard engage. I do just kind of want to soft engage, poke, continue building ults until Who Are You comes back. One of the reasons why we don't want to take the 5v6 in this scenario is we have trance, yeah, but they're going to have support ults as well, and we know that. And we want to make sure that in this comp, because of how particular it is with crossfires and how you want to engage on tanks, we want all of our 6 people, and that's kind of just specific to this scenario. In terms of in the grand scheme of things, the meta as a whole, a lot of it, because of the way in most comps, excluding tanks, time to kill is very small. And so you have lots of kill windows that you can capitalize on, even if you're a man down. And so being able to, if your team is very coordinated and mechanically skilled, you can capitalize on all of those little kill windows and the small time to kill to then take advantage of a situation that was 5v6, and then you can make it a 5v5, 5v4.
Awesome. We'll keep playing. Let me know if you want to pause.
Sure. And so same thing. We're going to take position up top. We're just going to poke and kind of wait until Who Are You gets back. And so now we're going to take angles here and engage. And so go ahead and pause it. So one of the things that I think Mayhem Academy did wrong in this scenario is that they fought outside of the point, making it to where they went from having 2 angles they have to look for to having 1, 2, 6. So you have the one from, or 5.
Oh yeah, I didn't
one
count the
from point.
verticals.
Yep, exactly. So fighting out here is not very good to do as tanks, and we wanted to capitalize on this because Alarm's not pressured. He's going to get a Discord and Trance to match their ultimates and for us to kind of engage since we're here. And then all we're going to do now, like our main thing, is we're just going to find targets that we can isolate, Discord them, ideally hack them. And so one of the things about playing Sombra is you can hack Discord and then completely blow up a target. So you can hack Ryan, or you can hack Diva in this scenario, or you can even hack Lucio. And with a Discord and focus, you can kill them pretty quickly. So that's kind of our goal right now. Is now that we've tranced and we've got them into an ideal position for us, we're going to try to take advantage of that and exploit someone who gets isolated.
Now, you're going to try and take advantage of someone getting isolated. Can you purposefully isolate an opponent in any way? And if so, how?
Yes. Yep. So that's where we have a Lucio boop, we have a Diva boop, a Winston bubble, and then even Winston primal and jump. And the whole idea
bubble,
is just
you're isolating people how?
Absolutely. If you bubble someone, they can't get healed by Lucio, or can't get speeded by Lucio. And a lot of the ways that people protect each other is by shooting the person that's attacking you, especially if Zarya doesn't have bubbles or Diva's already used Matrix. The bubble can basically isolate. It's especially good in comps that have like Lucio Zen or Ana Zen or something like that, where LOS is a big deal and the bubble counts as LOS. So like you can, even if someone's trancing, you can use a Winston bubble to isolate someone out of a trance and hard pick them because it's reliant on LOS.
Now, do you think no, this is not. If somebody had told me that Winston should use a bubble to block the speed boost for a disengage, I'd be like, well, that doesn't seem like a very valuable trade. Using bubble to block speed. Is that
sure
a good use of bubble?
Is
the lack of speed boost enough to isolate someone?
It's a very rare circumstance that you ever want to use your bubble just to isolate. It should also, of course, be used to protect your divers, or used. Ideally, you want to use it offensively, where you're using it in the dive. Unless you're playing a peel style where you're peeling back and want to use it to protect your Zen, that's a whole different scenario. But if you're going to be using it to isolate for speed, you have to make sure that you're getting value out of it as well. And so that's on the Winston player. That's something that it's kind of, I use the blocking speed as an example of like one way. It's not overly common, but it is something that you can block or even isolate like sound barriers for.
Yeah, sound barrier and trance you can certainly use to split,
Mm-hmm.
especially if
Yep.
they're graviton. Pretty easy. Just
Mm-hmm.
drop it till
Yeah,
it cuts the grav in half. Boom.
exactly.
Cool. Any other points before we keep going?
Nope. So that's pretty much just how we're taking this fight here. So you can watch it play out.
Just farm and grav.
Yep. And everyone's in their own zone, and we're just picking targets one by one. Is the goal. And so now we're going to set up, like I mentioned before, if you're playing dive into a tank comp, the biggest way that you capitalize on tanks is hitting them when they're transitioning. So what we're going to do here is we know, so go ahead and pause it. So one of the reasons in my opinion, tanks can be exploited on this point is that in order to make it work, they have to be in like one of two places. They either have to be on point or they have to be in stables to have their ideal position. So we want to hit them before they get there. So what we're going to do, you can literally look at Elk and the way he's positioned. Because there's no hog, he can do whatever he wants here in a moment. It's kind of hard to see right now, but he's sitting up top above point, and he's literally right in front of their face shooting.
This is him, isn't he? That's Elk?
Yep.
And then this
That's
is
Elk.
Alarm.
Exactly. So they can do that because there's no hog, and they don't have to worry about being pressured at all. The only person that can pressure them is Diva would go up, and we can protect them from that. So we know they're going to move to point. What we're going to do is just try to win off beat, primal, and do our same thing where we have angles. We focus on Discord. Well, actually, we just primal. Focus on Discords and try to win off pulse, beat. Or the other alternative is we try to win off EMP. But we actually end up saving that. We could talk about it for the next fight because we're rotating our ults to try and make sure that we have ults for every single fight. And so they're at a disadvantage because they're transitioning. We're going to beat and take the fight early before they can get on point.
Now, I don't think we've ever discussed ult rotation on this stream before.
Sure.
We've discussed ult economy, but ult rotation is not something that's ever discussed or really planned in Grandmaster or Top 500. And until you get to like the upper tier 3 teams or tier 2 teams, that's not a concept that people are familiar with. Do you mind giving the Cole's Notes version of what is ult rotation to people who might be watching and have never heard that term before?
Sure. So ult rotation is the idea that you're only using a certain amount of ults every single fight, and that you always have ults going for every subsequent fight. So in general, ults you're going to build your ult in, depending on how well you do, 1 to possibly up to 3 fights. And so the standard is pretty much every after 2 fights, you're going to have your ult most likely. So in that, our first fight we use primal trance. Our second fight we're going to use beat, pulse, maybe diva bomb. In our third fight we can use EMP. EMP is one of those ults where
need a combo.
it doesn't need a combo, exactly. So then if we get to a 4th fight or a 5th fight after that, our trance and primal are back up, and then after that our beats back up, and so on and so forth.
Okay, thanks. Hopefully that I don't think we've ever discussed ult rotations on the stream before. But anyway, let me know if you'd like to pause again.
All right. So there's the beat, and we're hitting them in transition. That bubble, like I said, we isolated the Rhine there, and we saw that. We isolated him, we hacked him, and then we hard focused. And we
Was
used
the
the pulse
pulse bomb
there.
necessary there?
Probably not. It wasn't. It definitely wasn't. But, it was kind of one of those where we're kind of planning to use it anyway, so I'm not worried about it.
Oh, it was part of your planned ult rotation, so it's factored in that you didn't need it.
Yeah. Well, so you can pause it for a second. I'll talk about this. So I want to be clear, like before all this happened, like this isn't something that I went in before and said, all right, guys, we're going to use, this is exactly how our ult rotation is going to look. It's kind of on the fly, something that Elk and, our other guys, particularly Elk, because he's kind of in charge of managing our ults. He's like our, I call him our default. Like I said, anyone can call for no play, whatever. But it says in the moment, Elk says, these are our ults right now. We're going to use this and this. And then we go from there. So it's not something that, we pre-planned this, 5 days ago where it's like, we're going to do this, 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 and this in the moment. This is our ideal strategy. And we talk about the baseline beforehand.
Now, you had mentioned in your ult rotation that you're using like Transprimal, Barrier Pulse, and then EMP as your like standard 3-fight ult rotation. Now, how does that factor into blocking Grav? Do you start adjusting that rotation specifically because you know that they're going to have Graviton? Or how do you change up your planning when you do know that they have a team-wide ult that you have to counter?
In our comp versus their comp, if we ever have more than 2 people in a Grav, we've failed our comp.
Say that again?
If in our comp versus their comp, we ever have more than 2 people caught in a Grav, we have failed to outplay their Grav. One of the reasons why Grav sucks against dive is because if we're taking angles, you can never get a big Grav. So if we're doing it correctly, ideally, Beast eats the Grav, or Kraken eats it with the ammo. But
Now,
you know,
does not all compositions are going to have that same statement applied. That more than 2 people Grav, we fucked up sort of thing. So if you were running more, like if you were running the standard kind of triple tank composition that is meta
Sure.
on this map, and this same situation applied. So if you are playing a composition that is a lot more death ball-y, wants to play more together, how does that change your ult planning, your ult tracking versus a Graviton?
So that's where we have to use our support ults. We need to make sure we have one for a defensive purpose. We're able to use it offensively because of the comps, you know, the matchup. But just like you would save, like for example, transfer blade and dive versus dive, you want to save trance for Grav or beat for Grav. Ideally trance, because there's less chance that, you know, Lucio would probably can get killed while he's using it. So you would definitely want to plan for that in advance, but we didn't have to because of that.
Awesome.
So here we know that they're going to have Grav, we know they're going to have Shatter, and pretty much all their ults work best when they're clumped. So we're just going to spread. And right here, he grabs and only gets Beast Halo. And so we can, so there's 2 things. One thing that's a little nitpicky, so go ahead and pause it, is I wanted Zach to EMP earlier, and I wanted to hit them before they could even grab. Now, there's 2 arguments here. Either A, you can argue that we can use the EMP to prevent them from ever ulting, or we can do this, outplay one of the big ults, and then EMP after. Because if you EMP before they can use it, they will have it for next.
Yes,
so there's 2 kind of arguments on what you can do. Both of them have their advantages and disadvantages. I think in general, our ideal situation is Zach goes a little early, but he actually gets kind of pushed out from his hiding position, which is fine. It happens. So we literally just sacrifice Beast Halo in the Grav, and because they're so focused on making this Grav work, Alarm and Elk are completely uncontested, and Alarm gets 3 kills with the headshots. So. So now we're repositioning. We have Transprimal up again.
There's that
and they
rotation coming into play. Yep.
Yep. And so now they swapped to Hog. So this changes something. So go ahead and pause it here.
Did you? And
Now
you'll have seen this, right? Just through the tab menu, Elk will have caught this
Exactly.
and called
Yeah.
the change in play.
Yep. So we should always have people checking tab when we're in downtime. So that's what I call, there's the post-engagement and pre-engagement parts of the fight. In the post-engagement, when you're doing your ult checks and everything, you should also be watching for comp swamp. So the moment that we see Hog, this changes how we position. Now Elk can't be like above you, spamming, looking right at you. You know, same thing with Alarm. We have to slow down, use walls, hide a little bit, and then we need to do our plan of like isolation, Discord hack. We need to do that quickly with less scouting info. So it'll be harder. We'll have to have one person peek, ideally from a distance, get an idea of where they're going, and then everyone collapse. So you'll see how we position this when we see that they're going top, is that we're going to completely change from being in your face or in your vision to not being in your vision, so that we can minimize options for hook.
Okay. Is this the Aero from FR or FNR GFE? Yes, the same Aero.
Yeah. All right, so here, like, we're not giving the Hog any opportunities, and we're hitting them in transition. So we're hitting them before they get to point, and then it literally just comes down to using our ults, using hack Discord, and we're just going to take people down one by one. And same thing, they got no value out of their Shatter, out of their Reaper ult, and out of their Grav, and that means that we played our comp correctly. Even if they cap point there, it's fine, like because our win condition stays the same. And now if you look, we already have, if we lost it, our next fight we would have had those next two ults up again.
So you're through all your analysis and your review of this game, it does not look like Mayhem Academy really gave you much of a run for your money. Were they the underdogs going into this? Were you confident that you were going to win this? Because the score eventually was 3-0. So you drew one map, but you won 3. So you took no map losses against the Mayhem Academy. Were you worried at all against the Mayhem Academy, or did you were just confident in the plans and the players?
So I will say, before I directly answer that,
Okay.
I will say you always want to give your opponents respect, and that you never want to underestimate them. Even bye week can surprise you with some crazy comp. Even when they're the vast underdog in your group, you always want to make sure that when you're approaching it and you're in game, you have a level head and you know that it's always a possibility that they can play out of their minds. But to directly answer your question, we were not concerned. We were unbelievably confident against these guys. We've scrimmed them in the past. It was a while ago, and even then, and even now, in watching them play in the way that we play, seeing their play style, we're super confident.
Awesome. So, I'll let you do a quick bio break, grab some water. I'm going to do the same. Chat while we're gone for the next 2 minutes. Post your questions in the chat because the chat has been just chomping at the bit to ask you some questions. So, so chat,
sure.
Post your questions. I'm going to grab some water. Aero and I are going to take a break. We'll be back in like 2 minutes. Be right back.
All right.
Wow, chat. Holy shit, was that in depth? I'm going to have to rewatch this as homework. Oh, man. The only other person who's made my brain hurt this much is Elk. So, I guess my first question to you, Aero, is where can I get a Fusion University jersey? Because I think I'm a fan.
They're coming out soon.
They're coming out soon? No lie?
Coming out soon.
Nice.
I don't know how quick they are going to be for sale. I hope the sale part's soon, but all the jerseys are coming.
Awesome. Well, let's take a look at the questions in chat. Do you have it up? Do you want to pick ones out, or do you want me to filter them for you? How'd you like to do this?
I would say probably let you filter them, whichever ones you think are probably best considering.
Okay. So when we're answering these questions, I'm going to assume I'll probably we'll have to think. Some people are going to be asking these from the perspective of understanding high-level Overwatch, and some people are going to be asking them from the perspective of applying what we're talking about to their actual play in ranked. So just try and answer it from the perspective of either solo queue or understanding Overwatch.
You got it.
So the first question coming from Myth Bustman: how do I improve as a shot caller and tracking ults for my team in game? My team also has communication issues, and we argue a bit about plays. How is this fixable?
Okay, so first to talk about ult tracking, the best thing that you can do is make it a point to practice that. So the way that I approach scrims and learning something new in scrims, and so this isn't going to be specific to ult tracking. It's going to be specific. This is just going to be in learning and growing in something new. So there's two ways that you approach scrims. Okay, either A, it's learning scrim, or B, it's a performance scrim. So if it's a learning scrim, in advance you need to set goals, treat it like a scientific experiment, control as many variables as you can, and set a hypothesis. What do you want to learn? What do you think is going to happen? What's the outcome? Use it, do it, and then when you go back and review, figure out what you need to change, what's different, whatever. So in ult tracking, when you record, look at all the ults on your team, okay? And you have to think in team versus team, it's probably going to be the same. Look at the ults on your team, okay? So look, how often does your Lucio get beat? How often does your Winston get prime? How often does your Zen get trance? Keep that in the back of your mind, and then as a shot caller, create your own if-then statements, okay? And so this is something that even Elk does, and something that luckily I don't have to tell Elk to do this. He does it on his own. But create your own if-then statements and keep them until you have them memorized. Write them down and keep it on the side, okay? And always reference them and always go back to them. And as the meta changes, as your team encounters new things, create new ones, and keep adapting and keep growing. So when you're in a learning environment, failure should be expected, and your team has got to come into your scrims with that mentality that if you're going to try something new, you need to expect to fail. You don't try to fail, of course. You expect that failures are going to happen, and you improve upon them. Okay, so when you review and you go back over and you say, okay, this is where it broke down. Let's figure out why, and let's go from there. And then if you're in a performance scrim, that's something totally different. And I try to make sure that every block that we do is separated to either a learning scrim, performance scrim. If you're in a performance scrim, you're practicing winning. Okay, in a performance scrim, the end screen of whether or not you push the payload to the very end of victory defeat matters. In a learning scrim, it doesn't. And you better believe that learning scrims are the vast majority of our scrim. Okay.
Yeah, I would expect as much.
So, yeah, so you need to practice your mentality in how you approach each scrim. So performance, you can practice just as much as you can practice learning a new style. So super quick sum it up. Firstly, for shot calling, make your own if-thens, adapting, going. For ult tracking, literally record, watch, and mark it down, and that's going to be your standard going forward. And then 3, for your team, make sure that the team understands that this block is going to be for learning, this block is going to be for performance, and go from there.
Next question is coming from Kusugu. It is saying, can you make a dive composition work for every type of composition with good team play and positioning in the way you play it, or is it suboptimal against certain types of compositions or on certain maps?
I'm a firm believer that dive can literally work against any composition, as long as, it's very important, as long as your team understands your win condition. The win condition is super crucial. And I think dive being one of the most versatile comps, there's always a way that you can win it. It may not be as plain and simple as killing the Zen, or killing the supports, but there's always a way that you can do it, and it's up to your team to figure out what the win condition is and how you can best get there.
Next question is coming in from Politosh. What do you first look for when you are preparing for a team you're going up against? What is it you look at when reviewing a VOD of theirs?
So there's a couple baseline things that we get out of the way first. So the very first things I need to know what comps they're playing, what their favorite maps are. And so you can, that's one of those things where you don't even have to go super deep in analyzing them to understand, what they're mainly going for. Especially what you want to do is particularly find a VOD. So if you're in this is more prevalent to Contenders or Overwatch. So you find a VOD where they're playing a match that means a lot to them because they're going to be trying their hardest. So you find what maps they pick. Now, Overwatch doesn't get to pick maps. Contenders does different. You find which maps they pick and what comps they play on that map, and you figure that out. Then from there, once you have that baseline, you can go a little deeper into it and understanding who are they focusing, and what are the paths that their tracer takes, and how their tank's set up. Because generally, between who they're focusing, what path their tracer takes, where their tank's set up, and how they set up their supports. There's always in one of those 4 areas you can exploit something against every team. There's always something that you can exploit, and so that's kind of like the place you. So
Okay. Next question is coming in from Bouncing Hope. And he says, thoughts on the current structure of Contenders? Anything you wish could be changed or improved?
I think the biggest pain point of Contenders is that Korea's, I think, well, of the 3 major, like I refer to them as the 3 major regions, Korea, North America, and Europe. The only one that's on like a land situation is Korea, and that is largely because of geography.
Yeah.
If we could find a way where we could make it work to where it's doable for players to be able to get paid and be able to move somewhere to play on a land environment for North America and Europe, you're going to see growth a lot faster. Because just in this match alone, who are you and Alarm are currently in Korea? That's something that won't be the case for much longer. But on Mayhem's side, they have 2 people in Europe. So the way that Contenders goes about combating this is you have in the regular season, it's home and away teams. In the playoffs, it's the higher seed gets to pick the server for map 1. And then for subsequent maps, the loser gets to pick what server you play on. So like for the first map, Nepal, we were playing on US West, which is, better ping for Koreans, worse pings for the Europeans. And then on maps 2 and 3, we were playing on East. So the biggest thing is that with North America becoming this, this big thing where a lot of players from the regions are playing, ping and location becomes harder to do. So whether that's teams being able to have more opportunities to bring players in, whether that's by a couple of different means, either creating a LAN environment or making it so that there's more protection so that teams want to keep players in North America, whatever the case is, figuring out a way that we could get everyone in the same, at least continent, that would be the biggest challenge.
Okay. Next question from Rafflecopter Pilot X. That's quite the name. Thank you and Aero for the round analysis on Nepal. Could you and Aero go into more detail on identifying when a team is in transition? What does that mean, for instance?
Okay, so one of the...
Go ahead.
Yeah. So what I mean by in transition is, just like a team thrives against certain heroes, teams also thrive based on where they're at physically in the map. So a map structure and layout is very important to some compositions. Triple tank comps with Reaper is one of those where they thrive in short range. So they're going to anchor around either stables or point in that, referring to village. And when they're in transition, it's when they're going from their setup phase to their ideal place that they want to go to, right? So just the in-between phase when they're moving is like what I'm referring to as transition.
So in the phase where in context when he was talking about it, was when they were running the triple tank, what they wanted to do was transition from in cover, since their composition doesn't have much or any ranged contest at all, other than them being able to threaten with the hog hook. The weakness is when the triple tank composition is in this area, transitioning from the safety of this cover to the point where they want to fight, on the strength of the inside of that village hut, or whatever you like, the point itself. So the transitioning from here to here, this is the location where they're weak. So just transitioning from locations. Okay, next question. Let me go back and find it. Sectum Sempra says, if Jayne sees this, he passes the chat interaction test. Well, we're literally doing Q&A, so I would hope I'd be looking at chat, but I passed. So, okay, next question is coming in from Oburn, and we already talked about this briefly, so I'll probably just give us a 30-second recap. If Widow is so heavily used in the current meta, why aren't you utilizing Zerg's abilities more?
Because there's 2 reasons for that. Okay, so firstly, Zerg, while he is an extremely good Widow, he's extremely new to team play. And so my goal with Zerg, and Zerg knows this, is we're taking our time with him because I want to make sure he is fully ready to go before we throw him into the fire. And I don't want to throw him to the wolves and he get eaten alive.
And then lose confidence in himself or something like that.
Exactly. His first ever scrim with the team was with us. So you have to understand, he has only been playing in a team.
His first scrim was on an academy team.
Exactly.
Holy shit, don't tell anyone else. They'll be jealous.
it will. His tryout was his first. It's one of those where we're taking our time with him, and I'm going to take my time with him until I know and I'm confident that he's not just going to get caught off guard by something. And secondly, it's because for some logistical reasons, he's not going to be able to attend Poland with us. So I want to make sure that the guys that are going are fully, have the experience and everything under their belt so that we can win it as well.
Awesome. Next question is coming in from One Bacon Q. With all the buffs to Hanzo and the new addition of Brigitte, is Tracer now considered a throw pick? I assume this is talking about solo queue.
I don't think she'll be considered a throw pick. She'll still have her strengths and weaknesses, but the thing about Tracer is with a deep understanding of the game and how to use the hero, Tracer can thrive in any composition against any composition. Granted, there's some ones that are going to be tougher for her, but as long as you know the limitations of the hero and how to play around it, Tracer will, in my opinion, always be a hero that can thrive under any circumstances, which is not the case for all the other heroes in the game.
Awesome. Next question coming in from Newcomer TV says, what tools do you use when trying to develop a new strategy, break it down, or understand where things went well or where things went poorly?
So the first thing is I try to get as many point of views from our scrim as possible. So I will always record like just a typical top-down fly camera of our scrims. If there's someone specific I want to record, I'll have one of our assistant coach or one of the players. I try to avoid players recording their POV because it affects frames. But so I'll usually have my assistant coach if we want to learn something new and have him record first person, and then we'll go over it together. And then from there, we'll either we'll either use, there's a tool called visor.gg, I think is what it's called now, where it's basically like a one that everyone can watch together and draw together on it. And then there's also one Stat Banana released a series of like overhead maps.
Those maps are
really
amazing.
Good. Yeah, so I use those a lot, and a lot of times I'll just share my desktop and we'll talk theory over top of them. Awesome. Those are like the two.
Those are the two main tools you're using?
The two main ones, yeah.
Okay. Next question is coming from Hey, I'm Uber. Is that the actual Uber? I don't think it is. Those three things he mentioned before, something about grabbing attention. You did mention on Nepal Sanctum you were going to talk about three things later. Do you remember what those were?
I do. So it was the three ways that I have players approach their own growth. I believe is what he's referring to. So there's three things. So firstly, in terms of your dreams and your growth as a player. Number one, you have to be faithful to your dreams all the time. Even when it's a situation where you're getting burned out, you're getting tired, comp sucks right now, you have to be faithful and you have to keep grinding and keep going. That is the most important thing. And one of the things that separates some of the top players from some of the lower players is that the top players have 10,000 hours playing. You have to be faithful to it and keep going, keep grinding, keep it up. The second one is make yourself available. So making yourself available to opportunities. Ideally, now while every opportunity may not be the right one for you, you have to be available and ready to seize that opportunity. When the door comes open, you need to evaluate it quickly and make your choice. The third one is always remain teachable, and that's kind of the one I talked a little bit about. Is always remain teachable and ready to grow, and that comes a lot in part of your pride and your ego. The best masters know how to be a student. The best leaders know how to be a follower first. So in remaining teachable, always accept criticism, whether it's true or not. Okay, whether the criticism is good or bad, like separate your emotion from it, accept it as criticism, not an attack on you, and be teachable and be ready to learn from something. Whether it's something that you failed, whether it's something that you did well, there's always something that you can learn, and it's up to you to figure out how to do it. So even Joe Schmo can teach me something new, okay? And I will put my pride aside, determine if it's something that's worth it, and grow from it. So those are the three things: being faithful to your dreams, available for opportunities, and always teach.
Now we're getting into life coaching, not just Overwatch coaching. Those are awesome. Next question is coming in from Fraquino. I really like playing Zarya, but is it worth mastering her if I want to go pro? What other tank heroes would you recommend?
Well, you need to decide what tank role you want to go for. So if you're playing Zarya, chances are you're doing an off tank role. So Zarya is a good off tank to learn, but you should also know how to play Diva, Roadhog, and probably Brigitte when she comes out, because I'd be willing to bet there's some scenarios where she's played as an off tank. So those are the ones I'd recommend. Start with Diva, because she's
super strong
particularly
right
useful
now.
and super strong and super versatile. Zarya is kind of more niche right now, where you kind of need to be playing around with her to make her useful. So yeah.
Next question. Do you stream on your own channel, and are you planning on doing any VOD reviews on? If you stream, do you plan on doing any VOD reviews on Twitch or YouTube?
Yeah, I do stream, and I have done VOD reviews in the past. I haven't streamed in a while. It's been
Busy,
particularly
understandably
busy,
so.
you know. So I do want to stream more, and I plan on it.
And what
But
is your
it just
Twitch,
kind of
just so I
depends.
can type it in chat for people?
It's Aero Gaming. I'll type it that as well.
Okay, if you want to just type it in chat, that'd be perfect. Aero Gaming. Nice.
Mhm.
Twitch.tv/Aero Gaming. Nice. Definitely give him a follow. Okay, and let's find, I gotta scroll back up to find the rest of the questions. In dive comp, is there a role that is most naturally suited to shot calling? Is it usually the supports or a mix of players?
So shot calling itself can kind of be broken down into three different areas. So you need to determine what areas you're strongest at. So there's in shot calling, there's scouting and calling engagement, there's mid-fight movement and on-the-fly adaptations, and there's pre and post-fight cleanup. And so those kind of three things all play a part, and you can kind of do them from pretty much any role. I think the ideal roles are probably going to be, if you're on like the Lucio. It depends on your comp, right? So if Lucio, it's easier to do in the post-fight cleanup. Tanks are pretty good about being able to do the mid-fight stuff, and usually your Tracer or your Diva are probably best roles suited for doing scouting and calling the engagements. It all kind of depends on your team and how you play around it. There isn't I wouldn't go as far as saying there's one role that's the best at doing shot calling. It really just depends on your team and your ability to play your hero while also thinking about things other than your play. So it just kind of depends on the player and the team.
Okay, next question is coming in from Benchmob DC, who asks, he's a writer. I feel like he's a writer. It's gonna bother me. Anyway, while the opportunity to match a competing offer is an incentive for an Overwatch League team to invest in their Contenders team, what happens in a scenario where a Contenders player receives an offer, but his Overwatch League team is not in a position, possibly roster size, to match the offer at that time? If you overfill your top tier roster, it seems like there would be less incentive to prioritize or invest in your Contenders roster in this kind of scenario.
Sure. So there's some of the rules I'm not particularly super positive about, but I believe you can make promises to have them join the team in a later season. And I believe that the player can also just go to the OWL team that's originally requesting, or you can work some kind of deal where they stay on the Contenders roster. There's a lot of different ways. The only advantage that the Overwatch teams get for having a Contenders one is that they have the ability to counter offer should it come up, whether that's a season down the road, a season in the future, or if it's something where they want to stay with their Contenders team, whatever.
Okay. Next question is coming in from BountyMan42. It says, "Hi, dude. For solo ladder play, what are the key objectives for a main tank? Should you strictly stick to making space and not killing, or if you know a target is low, go for that target?"
So that kind of depends on the comp that you're playing. What you should do, how you should approach it, if you're trying to approach it in terms of growing and getting better, your goal should be figuring out what's better in what scenario, and then being able to add that to your repertoire in the future. So I would recommend that you record, first of all, And then in the moment, if you think it's best to make space and your team capitalize on it, go back and watch it and be like, okay, that was the right call, and these are the reasons why. That was the wrong call. This is the reasons why. And then figure it out yourself. The best thing, like, there's no magic thing that I can say or that Jayne could say that'll make you better at the game. There isn't. The best thing that I can do is give you ways that you can learn and grow yourself and adapt and teach yourself. Because, when with so many variables in competitive queue, the best thing you can do is figure out how you can isolate what's a variable, what's a constant, what you can control, what you can change, and why it was good. And so the most important thing that you can do as a player is figure out how to learn. So if it's a situation where you think that you need to make space for your team, then go for it and make sure your team knows it. I'd recommend that you communicate that, because as a tank, it's hard to know what your team's doing without them communicating back to you. So I'd say, hey, look, I'm just making space. I need you to capitalize on this. Or if it's, hey, I'm overextending to get a kill, make sure they know. So I hope that answers the question.
Ginfinity is asking, is there a resource or encyclopedia which explains the sort of terminology that you've been going over, or any sort of resource that could be used for people who want to get into coaching and analysis?
I honestly don't think that there is. That's actually back when I was on FNRGFE, I was working on making that content, and I never got to, just because the schedule with how everything shook out. But I don't believe that there is. I believe Sideshow started putting up some explanations on terminology, and then of course Jayne probably goes over a lot of this all the time. I know some of the stuff I've watched she does, so I'd recommend starting with. That's why I said I think Jayne's channel is so crucial to Overwatch, because he goes over a lot of these things that are often taken for granted. And then also, I believe Sideshow's doing some articles as well that explain some of it.
Yeah, Sideshows have had some really good articles. If it's not like an encyclopedia or a wiki, but he's had some really good articles explaining like dive, peel, and some other lesser known concepts. So absolutely with that one. Connors asks, does Aero have any thoughts on Wizard's database? So I got a hold of a leaked Wizard Young database from like 2017, and you said you know or pretty close with Wizard. What do you think of his more stats-based approach to coaching?
That was why I loved working with him when I did, for the short amount of time that I did, is because he was one of the only coaches that I'd ever worked with that was willing to go that deep and put that much time into making that happen. And I loved it. I think it's great. I remember one of the original ones. I don't know if it's the one that you saw, but one of the original ones that I saw in his application I thought was fantastic. And I think it's very good for coaches to be able to see and understand, because a lot of that data that's in there is stuff that, that isn't easily accessible, that he went and found himself and figured out, a lot of timings and stuff that you can use and manipulate, which I think will be more used as Overwatch League teams get more structured and more time and more growth and more staff that you can have, your own databases and stuff like that. And as more stats come out from Overwatch League, I'm sure that they're probably giving their analysts a lot more details of matches as they're working on like API stuff. I'm pretty sure, and as that stuff becomes more prevalent, I think you'll see a lot of strategy become a lot more specific, and less about cerebral play and more about timings.
Awesome. Let me find I lost my question. Okay. Muffin is asking, we've talked about the pre-engagement phase, but what does the post-engagement phase include?
So the post-engagement phase includes capitalizing on players that haven't reset yet. So whether that's staggering a baby diva, just as an example, or someone who thinks that they're safe and just waiting for the team to respawn, you can kind of take advantage of them there. And then B, taking advantage of map position. Just like attention as a resource, ammo as a resource, ultimate charge as a resource, so is being able to take map positioning away from teams, especially on hybrid and payload maps, because you can then use that as your new anchor points to make your next play happen that you wouldn't be able to do if you hadn't taken them in advance. So a lot of your post phase should be figuring out, what was used, how you can, extend an advantage, and then getting ready to take the setups for your pre-engagement.
I'll take this question. Doormat asks, why do you play on, or why do pros play on shitty graphics even on computers that can handle more than max settings? There's a couple reasons for this. The first one is that it could be just a habit that's carried over, but you can make the game look significantly different and cleaner. And that effects add a distortion, like a refraction. If they, like Zenyatta's orb, for example, actually kind of like refracts the air and makes everything behind it distorted, so it can actually block your vision. Or a lot of the lighting effects or fog effects makes it actually more difficult to see things. And then on top of that, if you're using a lower render scale, like 75 or 50% render scale, it actually makes the red outlines of opponents larger and thicker, so they're easier to spot. Where if you're playing at like 200% render scale, the red outline of characters is almost invisible, and you basically have to identify them based on the character themselves and the skin that they're using instead of these very thick red lines that appear on 50% render scale. Anything I missed?
Oh, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Let's find another question for you. We're catching up. We're catching up. There was a ton. Another question for Aero from Mythbusman. I know I probably won't get a concrete answer for this, but do you know ways that I could find a coach that would be willing to coach a diamond ranked team? So I guess let's rephrase this question into, how does a new coach find their first team, and how does a new team find their first coach?
When I decided to take Overwatch seriously, both as a player and as a coach, in both instances, the first thing I did was I literally Googled Overwatch team, looking for team, and I went to every looking for team website, went to every looking for team Discord, and I asked. I went everywhere, and then from there, if you know anybody else in the scene, if you have friends in the scene, ask them, hey, do you know anybody that would be interested in working with our team for a while? And realistically, if you're in Diamond, or like you're working on getting better in Open Division, those kind of teams, you're probably not going to find a coach that wants to stick around for a long time, because there's just not a lot of coaches, and that's just kind of the way it is at the moment. So the coach is probably going to want to move on as quickly as possible and get higher and higher and grow, just like players do. Coaches want to grow just like players want to grow. So the most important thing that you can do is literally just get out there and ask, and in every resource you can. There's a lot of websites that do it. There's a lot of subreddits that do it. There's a lot of Discords that do it.
And
every single one.
And keep at it. Don't be discouraged by doors being closed in your face, because there are a lot of doors.
Exactly. Just like I said, being faithful to your dream, right? Keep going and find that person.
Next question is coming from Allendor. Says, who are pro Overwatch League teams scrimming against? Are they looking for random high tier teams to scrim against, or something else?
Pro Overwatch League teams mostly, if they have 12, they're doing in-houses. They'll scrim other Overwatch League teams that they're probably not, if they're not going to be playing them in this stage, they'll probably play them more if they're not, or there's a handful that do play some Contenders teams, but that's not too common. They're mostly just playing within Overwatch League. And there's a reason for that. It's not just that like Overwatch League teams currently are a little, kind of a step above Overwatch Contenders teams. There are some Contenders teams that are good enough to compete with Overwatch League teams. More that every system is its own bubble right now. So the things that you see in Contenders aren't always the things you see in Overwatch League. The things you see in North America aren't the same things you see in Korea. And so a lot of times Overwatch League teams, like the practice they'll get is just, it may not be better or worse, it's just different from what Overwatch League teams are running if they're facing a Contenders team. And a lot of that is because our team has to an extent, there's a lot of times where we're adapting because we can take advantage of exploiting another Contenders team's weakness, where Overwatch League teams don't have those weaknesses, or they dealt with that early. So now if they scrim us, like they're not going to get the same kind of practice that they would get if they scrimmed another Overwatch League team, just because of the bubble that they're in. So it's kind of a two-part thing.
Next question is coming in from Kafka Pro. Another question about solo queue. How do I approach comms in comp? I do open mic and mute when not in a team fight, but I'm not sure if I'm noise polluting or if the team is even listening. Should I just continue to shot call? Hi, Masters.
Absolutely, you should. One of the things about comp queue is that a lot of people either don't want to talk, are afraid to talk, or whatever the case is. You definitely should continue shot calling, especially if it's something that you want to work on and get better at. You definitely should. And then like we said before, just like improving something mechanically, you can improve something that's not tangible, whether that's shot calling, how you think, or whatever. Record it, review it, and look for just that. Look at your shot calling. Did I make the right call here? Did I make the right call here? What should I have done? And adapt on it and grow on it. But you absolutely should. I would never encourage someone to not talk when they play.
Next question's coming in from Kusugu. Says, is there a variable of players not performing at LAN? I remember some casters saying that about Dante from the San Francisco Shock.
Yeah, yeah. So the LAN client's an interesting thing. So there's we'll talk tangible and intangible. So tangible, the LAN client itself being a higher tick rate. There's a lot of things that register differently. It's one of the reasons why Widow became so popular on LAN is because all of her shots register. Where online, if you look at it, there's a lot of shots that probably should have registered that don't just because of ping. Same thing with Genji Blade, same thing with Tracer. A lot of hit scan feels a lot better on LAN. And if you listen to when a Winston's zapping somebody, it sounds like they're zapping a million targets on LAN because it's low. There's more instances of the tick happening, so less damage, more instances. Whereas online, it's more damage, less instance. And so like that's kind of one of those things
armor?
where no, because like the way that the netcode works, it doesn't. But it just affects the sound effect.
Oh.
Which when we first played, the very first time F1RGV played on LAN, like the very first scrim we had, Muma at the time he fed because it felt like he was doing so much more just because of the sound, and like kind of one of those where it threw him off and like we had to adjust to it, and then so that's kind of the tangible side of it. The intangible side is that when you're playing in front of an audience, when you're playing and in the back of your mind that everyone can see you, if you haven't worked on performance stress, a lot of times that can get to you and you can play worse because that people are watching you, or you feel like the outcome is more important, or what you feel like what's expected of you is more than what actually is. And so there's like this stress that kind of comes with it. So there definitely is both tangible things and intangible things. So yeah.
Do you have any opinion on IOStux? Do you know who he is?
Yeah, I know who he is. To be honest with you, I haven't looked at his content in a while, so I don't know how he is. But I can't really give a good informed opinion because I haven't looked at him in a while.
Okay, we're gonna cut off questions here, so I'll just finish the ones that have already been asked, and then we'll. Do you feel up to another map?
Yeah, I'm down.
Okay, we'll do one more map, and then we'll call her a day after that one. But okay, next question is, what role is most needed in high elo comp and pro level? I really want to pick a role to focus on, and one I can play in ranked consistently to practice.
Tanks. Right now,
tanks, main tank especially.
main tank especially, that's the most needed. And the reason why I say that is, well, firstly, there's a lot of people that just don't want to play it, and so in comp you end up saying like 4 DPS, 2 healers, and what. But one of the other things is that both main tank and off tank are some of the most, in my opinion, some of the most stressful roles because of what you need to do to make it work. Because it's a lot of decision making, not mechanical skill. And when a lot of people go into Overwatch casually, they're going in just to to play or to frag or whatever, not necessarily to focus on the strategic, the thinking, the how do I exploit, that kind of thing. And tanks, especially D.Va, it's like almost entirely, like I'd say probably 70 or 80% decision making over actual mechanic. Because if you feed, your team fight's probably lost, and you need to know where to be when. And so those are like the most important roles in comp right now.
Next question coming in from Striker Eye. Do you both think that the difference in comp and playstyles between different regions and levels, Overwatch League, Contenders, etc., is a product of teams playing to their strengths, or due to the prep provided by the staff support or the support staff in each area? Basically, what do you think drives the meta differences between the region? And I'll answer first. I think it's the fact that you are preparing, like first you're playing what you're strong against, but then you're playing against only a very specific number of teams. So if no one else in the region really knows how to play, Tracer Sombra, Tracer Sombra Dive or something, then that's not something that you have to prep against. or a composition whose main counter is Tracer Sombra Dive will be stronger just based on the other teams in the region. Yeah. What would you think, Aero?
I definitely agree with that sentiment. I think you start the start of what you decide to play is based on your team's, and then from there you adapt and grow on it based on the idea of the meta. Like, so the way a meta is formed is it starts with people's theory behind what's strong when a patch comes through, and from there the testing and scrims. It honestly is kind of like spreading a disease, in my opinion. This is kind of crazy to think about, but it's actually happened with the Sombra meta, where one team will run it in a certain style that just happens to be particularly dominant, and then you'll see other teams mirror it and see if it's good in mirrors, and then they'll play it against other comps, see if it's good against other comps, and then they'll decide, all right, this is now our new strength in this meta, and then from there, as it develops in Overwatch League or structured leagues, they're going to then start making adaptations to be able to like we did against Mayhem, to exploit a certain thing about that team if they can't play Widow, or if their tanks are overly aggressive. You can make differences about comps you play or how you play the comp to then capitalize on them.
Okay. Next question. Second last question? Last question. Last question. We finally made it. What is your pet peeve, or what triggers you when you're coaching players?
What triggers me?
For me, I'll just give you my answer. It's I put a lot of emphasis on whether or not compositions are playing slow or playing fast, and I define slow or fast by basically whether or not you're favored in the posturing phase. So it's how long you want to stick in the posturing phase before engaging. That's one thing that I really try and emphasize on players, because then a lot of teams don't recognize the differences between slow and fast comps. So when a team plays a slow comp and then tries to force engagements, I get really triggered. That's my largest kind of. I very much dislike that. What's your
Sure.
pet peeve?
If I had, so this doesn't necessarily happen with the Fusion Uni guys, but it has happened in previous teams. It's where if we talk about something, go over something, and if I feel like you're not giving 100% effort in growing, in adapting, in trying in this scrim, I view practice as something that's very important, and I expect you to be giving 100% effort, regardless if it's a learning, if it's performance. The amount of effort that you give never changes, never ever changes. So if I ever feel like a player isn't giving full effort, that irritates me a lot. But it's, like I said, not something that I generally deal with the Fusion University guys. That's more like past teams.
Mm-hmm. Yours seems a lot less petty than mine. Which map would you like to look at next? Pick your favorite map. You think that you did the what best on, or you think there's the most to improve on? Which map would you like to look at next?
So here, can we? I want to go over. I do want to go over Hollywood, but I can make that quick. And the Horizon map is an extremely quick map that I can make super short. So is it possible that we can go over both if we make it quick?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I don't mean to
Now
rush
I
you. I was
do.
just you're going over very tough stuff. I don't want to
Yeah.
demand too much of your time or attention. I know you're a busy man.
Sure, no problem. There's one other thing that someone asked that I actually get asked a lot. They asked early on before we really started asking questions that I saw. They're asking who are you in Alarm communicate and do in an environment like that? And so I'll address that real quick before we go in. Is that who are you in Alarm have incredibly good mentalities about approaching English. You have to understand for players like them and for other Korean players coming in the teams, they're not just being asked to perform; they're being asked to learn another language and be bilingual, which is not an easy thing to do. They both have extremely good mentalities coming into it, and like even Alarm, before he was decent in English, he forced himself to take 2 hours of English lessons every day, and he would do that before we'd ever scrim or after, depending on the time of day. And he would do that to try to communicate. So in game, comms aren't that hard because a lot of it's widespread stuff of we're saying diva, or diva used shift, or diva used E, something like that. That's global. And then out of game, we did end up picking up someone to help translate, to help with some of the finer points. But for the most part, as long as you take time and everyone sacrifices a little bit to be able to communicate on both sides, it works out well. And it helps that Alarm and Who Are You have fantastic attitudes about it all. And so we have a really good team environment. I can't brag on Who Are You and Alarm enough for how well they work within an environment like this and how well our team works.
Awesome.
So yeah, talking about Hollywood.
Just
Now,
let me interrupt because I do have to thank subscribers. There was quite a few while we were
okay,
chatting, so I'm just gonna do my thanks and gratitude before
sure.
we jump into the next one. So first, 100 bits coming in from Benchmob DC saying, "I'm torn over whether I like the analysts coming in blind or prepared. On one hand, blind shows off how adept some of these individuals are in being able to pick up on things immediately, but Sexy also introduced a few micro actions that we might otherwise gloss over." What do you think? Just what do you think? I mean, more entertaining for an analyst to try and see things for the first time, or come in with prep work done?
Uh,
If like
so when
just
I do
from for
my
just somebody who would just be like watching the stream and enjoying it, would you like the higher prep work?
So I think it depends on what you're trying to get out of the stream. If you're looking for just basic Overwatch knowledge, I would want someone who prepped. If you're wanting to learn how to analyze, I would want someone who hasn't prepped. When I do VOD reviews, I don't prep. When I do something like this, I kind of prepped. Like I went over and kind of had like some of the major points I want to talk about, but I didn't go into like fine detail.
Okay. Blank 22299 says, "I audibly yesed at my win." I don't actually know what he's referring to there. Is it a guess my SR test? I don't remember. Potato Water with the Prime sub. And then 23 Limes resubscribed with Prime for 5 months in a row. Welcome back, 23 Limes. OWL Linares with the Prime sub. Osiris TV resubscribed with Tier 1 for 2 months in a row. Thank you very much. EK Cool 1105 subscribed with Prime. And then there were 3 gifted subs actually. Shu, Zachary, and Elk all got gifted subs. How kind of you guys. That was very kind. Alex Avio, as well as Bioshin with the Prime sub, and then Mahan and Old Man Fender with Prime subs as well. I appreciate all of the subs. Really encouraging that you guys like this sort of content. You know, I'm basically stealing Aero's content at this point, but appreciate the support for the stream. You know, going full time in 8 days, so you're going to be expecting a lot more of this. And then Sekulo
Hey.
drops the 500 bits with no message attached. Appreciate the support, guys. Okay, you ready, Hollywood?
I'm ready.
Let's
All
go.
right. So
Now, what specifically, you wanted to look at this one. What specifically on Hollywood are we looking for here?
So I wanted to look at there. So one of the things I noticed was there's a couple like mistakes and things about dive that we can just basics about dive and ways that Sombra plays into counter Sombra comps that we can talk about. And then there's just some fun stuff that ended up happening in the middle of it that I noticed.
Okay, take it away.
So setting up where we're at in this. Firstly, this one, we were kind of 50-50 on whether or not Mayhem would choose this or Numbani. So if you could pause it right about now. So we knew that Mayhem has mostly picked Numbani. So we kind of had it in the back of our mind that they probably try to do something they're strong at rather than feel like they could exploit us on this. And considering their comp and the fact they picked this, I'm pretty sure that they felt like we were weak on it and that they could exploit our dives on, which we did do a couple mistakes. But in approaching this, the first thing that we should look at, the very first thing you should see when a fight's about to happen is like, what are the win conditions of this comp? So they are running Junkrat McCree with dive tanks, which means they're entirely all about counter dive, counter Sombra. They want to peel for their McCree and take advantage of the dive in bad positions.
And they're also running Lucio Mercy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we don't see this composition very often. Is this because they want some more survivability against the Sombra? They want less diveable, so they're playing anti-dive, but they don't want to give the opponent any more dive targets than necessary. What's the logic behind the Lucio Mercy?
The logic, like, you're only running Lucio Mercy if you feel like your other support option is just going to get blown up regardless. So they want to keep their supports alive in hard pocket, one of either their Junkrat or McCree, depending on the moment. And so Lucio, in this case, provides the speed and the boop, which is pretty crucial. And then Mercy's really good at pocketing one individual. Plus, I think I believe Paintbrush is particularly good at Mercy. And then, so they probably just wanted a Mercy for the sake of having a Mercy, and then just combo a Lucio instead of having a Zen, so that because they're on offense, you want to be able to attack and
you
move
said
your
you wanted her to Mercy? Is Paintbrush female?
No, I don't know, but
okay.
I don't think so.
I didn't think there was a female Contenders player in North America.
Yep. So yeah, we can go ahead and play it out here and look at something. So our dive, so let's go ahead and pause it. So right here, we would have seen, if we hadn't been able to like scout and see what they had, we would have seen the comp about 5 seconds ago. So that's where we need to make this like, okay, we need to be super careful about our dives. If we're engaging, we need to treat it honestly, like you treat it kind of like it's a tank comp where you need to take the angles, and you need to make sure that you are manipulating McCree's attention here, and that's big because McCree's flash needs to only be used against one target and not four. So when we're doing this, like we know that our Zen's not going to get pressured. Our win condition should be get our Zen in a good position to be, as useful as it can be. And then also when we dive, we need to be super synced about how we dive and what targets we.
Where is that
I mean,
position on this map? Where is that position for alarm to be?
So you generally have one of three positions that you put alarm or your Zen in general, depending on where they go. And one of the reasons why we decided to run Lucio against these guys so that we could move to those positions as quickly as possible without having to get a lot of scouting information beforehand to make that happen. So we wanted to be able to move them quickly from it's either the top or bottom, like Cathay in general is like usually the default spot. And then from there, depending on where they go, if they like flank into dark and go behind, or if they're just posturing main, you can move them towards the dumpster side back a point. And then from there, you can rotate them up to the high ground, depending on where the attackers have gone. So it's kind of those 3 points that you can use your Zen around. And then that where you go is largely dependent on the comp you're facing and where they set up. So that's a decision that we have to go and talk about, like if-thens in advance. And then we can, see, all right, this is happening. So now we do this. And that's part of the reason why Lucio is more favored here than Mercy in our comp, is because we want to rotate alarm as quickly as possible as soon as we get the information. So that's kind of why we're running Lucio instead of Mercy, and then use alarm as much as possible now, so we can play it through. And there's two things that go wrong. So pause it right now. So right before Beast went in, Zach went in and started putting pressure, and he had to teleport out a little early.
Okay.
Which that means you can't really tell because the way the view is, but you can hear him teleport out if the sound. And so that means Beast is a little overextended, and Kraken's a little overextended. Now we could win this still if Kraken doesn't get trapped, but they peel back into this corner and hard focus. They blow up the bubble and then hard focus Beast, which, because Zach had to get out early, that kind of takes away the pressure of our dive, and we end up kind of feeding it a little bit here. So we can play it through, and that's kind of what happened as to why. And like what we should have done was either Zach engage slower or Beast engage quicker, and we just need to make sure that timing is synced. And Alarm is still playing bottom at Cafe. So like there's a couple, like we could have rotated him faster, we could have rotated him somewhere else. There's a lot of things that we could have done, but it got desynced and just we made kind of the wrong decision.
Now you are re-engaging here.
This is mostly just like
burn ultimates,
stall, just that kind of thing. Build ultimates because against them. So this decision is largely because of how we're viewing second point against them. So you can pause it real quick. Go ahead and pause it now. So we did that because we wanted to burn ults A, but B, we wanted to take a quick second fight and try to hold them in the choke at door. And so to do that, we needed to reset quickly. We didn't want to like take it slow and whatever. We wanted to burn ults, and then so we have an ult advantage, and then go quickly into the next fight. Especially since we have EMP now. So we did that. That's the reason why we did that, and we want to take it at a very specific time and use our ultimates. Then we can swap, because how second kind of works is there's a period where it's better to play more of like a Peely style just because of like the map layout, and there's a period where it's better to play a super aggressive style if you're on offense and defense, and it kind of flips depending on where the card is, where you have to play. And so we want to go aggressive before it gets to the part where we need to play a little more defensive. And so we know that we can make swaps because they don't have a Widow player. we want to be able to use our ultimates and get an advantageous fight to then open up the possibility of being able to swap to Widow for the rest of it. So that's the long-winded answer of why we did that to burn their ultimates to then take this quick fight that we're about to. Now, it kind of sucks that Zach died that late.
Because he's going to get staggered, and he was the win condition for your next fight.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to take it a little later than we wanted to, but that's okay.
If somebody other than Zach got killed there, would you have still gone for like the 5-man EMP play, or would you have waited for 6-man to go for the EMP?
I think we probably would have gone for it still, because EMP is such an oppressive ult. You can do it. So that's what we just did there. We used Pulse, we used EMP, and now we're into the ult rotation phase where ideally we didn't want to use like both Diva Bomb and Pulse, but it happens. Don't think about it. Let's just move on and focus on what we need to do next. So now we can use our next 2 ults to make something happen. They use Tire, which is good for us. So now we just need to see how they're going to do it. So at this point, we need to be a little more aggressive. Like we want to take fights before it gets to this midway.
And when you say you want to be more aggressive, in terms of like this specific fight, how does that actually play out? More aggressive positioning, quicker engagements, more aggressive. So like everyone know what the word aggression means, but what in-game actions does the Fusion University here want to take in order to actually express that aggression?
Sure, yes. So what I mean by that is we want to make quicker engagements. We want to be the first ones to the punch to make the fight start. So because we're running Lucio Sombra still, if we were running Mercy Widow, Mercy Junkrat, something else, we can be slower. I should say faster rather than aggressive. We want to make the fight happen as quickly as possible. Because if they can take it slow and poke us and then play like a slow peel style, then that's where they thrive a little more in this composition. We want to take away as much of that as possible right now and go for fast plays until the cart reaches about half, and then we can start playing a little bit slower.
Was there anything else you wanted to point out?
No, I think we just use beat, and I don't remember if we primal on this one or not, but alarm's not
your team
pressured at all.
More than a lot of other teams I've seen use both of their support ults rather aggressively, even before either of their tanks really get focused down. So it's almost like a preventative, or you're using it as an offensive support ult instead of like a defensive support ult.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the ways we look at it. Is you have both like offensive style and defensive style. And so if it's something where we know that we don't have like this big thing that we have to save an ult for, you want to use it offensively and use it to win a fight.
And you're not going to be committing a defensive support ult to Riptire. You're just going to basically call that one lost fight unless you can kill it. You're not going to try and commit a support ult to Tire.
Yeah, we're just going to try to make it as inefficient as possible. Whether that's one person dies to it, we kill it or whatever. We don't really want to commit a support ult to it.
So from having watched your Nepal play, is it very much a theme that you're trying to use your own ultimates offensively, but then outplaying enemy ultimates with position and action instead of your own ultimates?
So it depends. Go ahead and let's pause it, and we'll go back about 15 seconds here. So it largely depends on the composition we're playing and the point that we're playing it on, because there's like here's good. There's 2 ways to look at it, right? Either A, we want to quickly reset a fight, or we want to prolong it and just kind of outlast until we see an opportunity and go. So in this scenario, because of the way that we view the points layout right now, in this scenario, in this comp versus this comp, where the point is, we want to be aggressive and be proactive about the plays. And that's largely because of the fact that they're playing this counter dive comp and they're in this part of the map. If the cart's in the second half of the map, it's where we want to be a little more reactive and find a cleaner engagement rather than a quicker engagement. So we kind of view this as like 2 points in 1 point of this map. So it just so happens that this style lines up with the way that we're playing against tanks on Village. If that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, so This engagement is really kind of sloppy from us. At this point, both of our tanks aren't there, and we go for an EMP play and try to win it and not play it, which isn't really the right call. And it ends up just being kind of a sloppy use. And I want to point out that for Beast Halo, this cactus is the MVP of this fight.
Where is Beast Halo right now?
You'll see it in about like 5 seconds. If you look where the cactus is right there, where Paintbrush is, that cactus is going to save Beast Halo's life.
No way. So the High Noon hits it? Unbelievable. He did that on purpose, too.
Yeah. So he gets out. Now, it's unfortunate that we couldn't reset the fight like quickly or get out and be able to re-engage quickly. But what that prompts is now we're just going to try to delay and extend this fight as long as we can, so we can now swap to our other style that we're expecting. Depending on so Elk actually ends up living instead of dying here, so he's just going to stay out Lucio. But we're expecting to now swap to either Widow Mercy or Soldier Mercy, and we actually want to do Widow.
That was a very well executed dive. Can we talk about that one?
Yes, that was the other part. I forgot.
Wow, that is the cleanest dive I've seen since watching Boston. What the hell is that?
So we pause it real quick before we talk about it, so I can. We're actually planning to play Widow here and play it slow and find proper engagements. And so now that we have our setup here, right? We have everyone. We end up staying on Lucio for beat. This is like you said, super clean dive. This is how you want to execute it in like perfect case scenario where we do it as cleanly as possible. So first thing to notice is that McCree's discorded, and this is like super good for you find the discorded target. Who Are You doesn't even have to one clip him or hard commit. He can just get as much damage as he can and play safe, and then the tanks are going to finish it off. And it's super quick. This is like a great example of capitalizing on a kill window and the low time to kill in dive.
Yeah, because Who Are You doesn't even have to get him low, right? It's the landing combo plus the melee is 80 plus Discord is 104. So as long as he gets him below half, that initial dive, even assuming if he doesn't use his Tesla gun at all, is going to be enough to finish off Mikey. So
exactly.
I really like this dive. This is
the other part of this is you look like the angles that people are taking. Who Are You's here? I believe Beast actually ends up coming like over the top, and then Alarm's position kind of back in the doorway towards third, and it's a very good example of taking different angles and a clean dive in general.
Okay, let's watch this dive one more time. This is just so clean. Boof, he's dead.
Perfect. Yeah, Kraken actually ends up going aggressive here because we still have the Lucian. We committed beat to it because we want to commit and clean up the fight. So yeah, so now we're at a point where we can swap the Mercy, we can slow it down, and we can play to do a lot of pressure, like initial pressure, and then play to like be more peely and focus around cart. And Zach provides that pressure with the Mercy. And so we don't need to rotate our Zen as quickly as possible. We just need to get them set up and then play these angles. So this is an example of us wanting to play slow. Now, so yeah, they all go on this flank here, which.
And this is because they're playing more of this like anti-dive style, right? Where they want to have you engage on them. So with them kind of like turtling the payload, it would force you eventually, to come to them. So is this what they're trying to accomplish by, doing this really long flank where they don't have to fight you in the open, where you have an advantage, and they just kind of like want to force you onto the payload?
Yeah. So let's go back and we'll talk about a couple things. So they want to force us to come into them, which we're not going to take the bait of going in there unless we have a couple conditions. Okay, there's a couple ways that we can win in there, and that's we need to have either we need to be committing a support ult and going into it, or we need to be committing a tank ult and have something on their side to prevent them from dealing a lot of damage. So in this case, they commit the tire and take it to a completely different section. And that means that they don't have the Junkrat spam, which is so insane in close quarters, and we can then go and look to either kill the Junkrat while he's tiring or capitalize, use, pulse primal when they're in a small space and capitalize on it. And so
So the main reason
Kraken,
you're engaging there is not because you're trying to like kill the tiring Junkrat explicitly. It's the fact that he can't place new traps, he can't conk you, he can't spam out any of these corridors, and it gives you an opening to kind of go in. Is that right?
exactly. Yep, exactly. And so Zach right now, like it limits Zach's effectiveness, but because we're committing ults to it, like we're confident in it to where Zach can pick anyone trying to get out, and he just has to cover the doorways. And then the rest is going to be on Beast and Who Are You, just kind of following up. And Beast in particular is really good about using his primal combos to be able to land, the hit, jump, land, hit stuff, especially in corner. So that's one of the things that Beast is particularly good at. And so we're confident doing engages like that. So you can play it out. So there it is. They get the double support kill with the pulse bomb because they're in close corridors without the Junkrat, and then it's just primal and cleanup. And so once we get that, now we can set up for the last fight. And they committed both their Deadeye and their Tire to it, and they're running dive, which now that they swapped to dive in this aggressive style, which is kind of what we expect for running the second half of the point. If we're on defense and they're on offense, we kind of expect them to swap to this. It's going to be more about making sure Alarm doesn't die to the dive. But since he has trance, it kind of is like this. It really works out for us where we don't have to pocket him and he can just play to live off his trance. And then we know that they're probably not going to get Blade, so he can play aggressively.
And then
he wins the duel against IPA. Exactly. Like we don't even have to think about Alarm because he has trance right now.
Yeah.
And he's just such a good Zen. Like, we can just focus on playing our Widow.
Now I want to rewind a little bit and go back to try and
Sure.
pull solo queue lessons out of this. Now you've explicitly listed as having Primal in one of your kind of like ult rotations, and I don't think I've seen a single time in this series so far in which Beast Halo has used Primal defensively. It's always offensively really high damage, a huge burst in movement ability during that 10-second. Why, like in ranked, at least in the even up to Masters, Primal is primarily used as like a stalling tool. Why do we not see that used in Contenders? And what is, from a tier 2 perspective, what is the more optimal use of Primal?
Well, right now, Primal is kind of used as a means of being enabling your Winston to go deep. Without having your diva with him. So if he has Primal, your diva can play to protect your backline, and your Winston can just go do Winston thing. And so that's kind of the reason why they do that, because if you're trying to go deep on the backline with a Winston that doesn't have Primal, he needs a little bit of support in order to not just die immediately. And so by having Primal, he can use the Primal to either just make space, you can combo a support. If you can make space for your team and combo the Zen, then and not die, those three conditions means that your diva can protect your backline while your Winston is doing those things, and that becomes like one of the reasons why Primal is used in an ult rotation and being able to be used offensively, because it allows for other defensive options in your diva.
Anything else you want to mention before we keep playing this one out? You guys have won this fight. You killed Mikey A. You still have the trance, and looks like Mopey. Actually, don't know how to pronounce his name.
It's just Moopy.
Moopy?
Yeah. Yep. And then we're just playing Peel for our Widow now because we don't have to think about our Zen, and yeah. So we're just gonna clean up from here.
Okay.
So play to keep our Widow alive. Now that that's happened, they now have to prioritize point, and we can just take it one step at a time and do proper basic dive things of Discord, find your Discord, everyone focus it, help each other out, that kind of thing. Yeah, so our offense is kind of interesting. We do well for the first part of it, and then we kind of get stalled a little bit because we go a little over aggressive, and I think we kind of disrespected them a little bit. That's one thing that we're actually going to be going over as a team and talking about whenever we do go over this after our break. because it's one of the things where as a coach, I want to see what they thought and why they did certain things, and decide if it's was something that we just did mechanically wrong, or is the idea behind why we did it wrong. So those are two very different distinctions that we need to deal with as a team, for when fights go badly. Because if it's something that mechanically is wrong, like that's a super easy fix. Like whatever. If it was like idealistically, like why we went in for this reason, well, that is something that we need to deal with right away. So
Now, this is a question that I get asked quite a bit from teams. When you're talking
sure.
about doing your VOD review or your strategy sessions, what is the ratio of time you spent in VOD reviews or in planning sessions compared to how much time you actually spend scrimming? Um, so, in my experience, you either need equal parts of review and scrim, or more review 1v1s planning sessions. Like if you're incorporating things other than VOD reviews into your team practice, and in order to prove, what do you do other than just scrim, and in what ratio?
Sure. So we always do the way that we review. I have actually very specific. I don't think I talked to the players about this, but the way that I approach VOD reviews is I always try to do either a VOD review or a meeting as a team, at least 1 hour a day beforehand. And so sometimes that'll be us like going over mistakes we did in a match, us learning how to do something new as a team, us scouting and making tweaks for what we're going to do in our next match, or us cleaning up our play for like coming into the next match. It's going to be one of those things we're doing in that 1 hour. And then one-on-one stuff I do individually and separately. So I usually don't do like a 1-to-1 ratio. A lot of that's because some of our guys are still in school. Some of our guys don't have the time, or it's tough to like, for example, our Koreans, they have to wake up at like 6 in the morning to scrim. So I don't do stuff with them beforehand. A lot of times I'll talk to them, but individually after about some stuff. And so yeah, that's kind of the way we structure it right now. It's like 1 hour, and then we scrim. Like usually we have like 4 hour scrim days, and I try to do like a total of like a 5 to 6 hour day, ideally, for our players. Because I like, so this kind of goes under coaching philosophy for myself. I like to treat it as if it's like a job. So I come, I've been a part of the 9 to 5 background. I want to make sure that we have a clear separation of this is work time. We're super serious. We are focused right now. This is where, we need to be all in right now. And then the rest of the time is, you time. I don't want you to get burned out, like, stuff that, I'm not going to ask of you. So I try to keep it like a schedule. So it's the same every day, the same times every day, the same structure every day to get in the habit and kind of keep the environment static as much as possible. Remove as many variables as.
Now, I should know this, and I apologize for not knowing this, but does Fusion University have any other analysts or assistant coaches working with you?
Sure. We have an assistant coach named Pajion. I picked him up. He used to work for Bond Spirit Gaming, is in Korean Contenders. He's currently in Korean as well. I mean, he helps a lot with some of the finer details. Like the way we kind of structure it is he kind of helps with a lot of individual stuff, and then I'll cover most of the macro stuff, and then we'll convene all the time and like help each other out and just kind of do that. And we also have like someone who does like translation and kind of helps with like some managerial stuff. So that's kind of the way we structured it right now.
Anything to talk about this attack before we take a look at it?
No, we can just go right into it. So we end up doing a flank here because we want to take away their high ground, because we're expecting them to play an Aristocomp, and we want to take away their setup and make them have to reposition. So we do a flank here.
You're expecting an Aristocomp because of your research into them, basically.
Because of our research, yep. Where we were expecting Orisa, we weren't entirely sure if it'd be Hog or Diva again. Like that's one of those things that we didn't really have a lot of data to be able to say they're definitely playing Hog or Diva. But so we want to take away their high ground, and it gets a little sloppy because we get kind of
more than a little
disjointed.
Sloppy. I think a little sloppy is pretty generous.
Yeah, that's fair. We wanted to take away their high ground to be able to give that to our Zen, and then be able to decide where we go from the fight from there. So that was our goal, was to get our Zen set up. They handled the transition pretty well, and then from there we just are like the win condition becomes just like in tanks. Like we spread out, we try to isolate someone, we build our ults and try to win off an ult or an isolated target or something. And in this case, we got a lot of damage off the pulse bomb, and we're able to clean up off the pulse bomb. So
and this fight has prolonged long enough that spawn advantages is Nimbani, or it's not. We're not on Nimbani. Hollywood does have a slight spawn advantage, but only just barely.
Right.
As this fight goes along, that is, contributing what is more or less even trades back and forth to eventually go in your favor. Because this first fight is the fight that started the entire match, right? Did we just see a
it's still the first fight?
1 minute 50-second fight.
Yep, we did. And so that's like I mentioned before, we're confident in prolonged
So
fights.
You're kind of trained to thrive in the chaos. Is that how you phrased it?
Yep, exactly. So that's one thing where I will note that we are on the East Coast server right now, so a lot of who are used blades. That one was pretty good, but a lot of times he'll go for like a dash swipe that doesn't happen on his side.
Who are you still?
Or like happens on his side. Yeah, so they're playing on 220, 230 ping.
Yikes.
In this map. Okay, so this is just us setting up early. We want to make sure that we can get as much car time as possible and still pressure. Ideally without our tanks dying.
Ideally, yeah.
So we're like this style right now is kind of specific to Mayhem because we want to take all of their attention away from cart and like try to get as much as we can from the first cart push so that they can't set up in the choke there.
Now, why did the Mayhem Academy, knowing the transition to first to second is very prone to staggers, why did they not hard reset? Why were you able to catch them out, like more or less, not one at a time, but you were able to catch 2 or 3 of them in kind of groups and pick them off? Why did they not hard reset here?
Well,
let's take a look at that again.
Yeah, sure. We'll go back
because this is like the first thing that I would coach a team to do is avoid this exact situation. So let's take a look at this. You've just capped.
People are still respawning.
You are moving up, and you're immediately looking for the staggers here.
So from Fusion University, we're looking for staggers, and then we know that there's not any staggers. So the next step is we're going to take map position to pressure them and make their engagement slower.
But they do kind of. Oh, so they did fully regroup. They just engaged really poorly, or I missed something. They got split.
Here, yep, they get split, and they're more concerned about pushing us off the high ground than pulling the fight to point, which works out in our favor, because that's what we want. That's what we're going for. Is we want to avoid them fighting on point. We want them to be fighting back here, towards the jail saloon side, and then we're just gonna try to rotate our ults as best as we can to try and make that fight go as long as possible.
Sorry,
so that's why we. Go ahead.
I didn't follow the flow of the fight. This one is the primary mistake here. The fact that after Moopy and Krems took the high ground, they followed you during the retreat to the low ground, where ZZA and Mikey couldn't assist.
Yeah, they split their backline and front line.
Yeah,
pretty aggressively. So here they push us off, and then
because neither Mickey nor ZZA are in a position to assist.
Yep.
Bomb takes out Moopy. Paintbrush goes for the res. Gets punished by Zachary.
So just now is where the rest of their team is now in the position to follow up. So you can see like that window where their tanks were isolated, and we're able to do that. And so now it's just clean up. This is post fight now, where we're cleaning up tanks. We're thinking about, all right, what staggers can we get? What positioning do we need to get now, so we can look to increase our pressure during the pre-engagement of the next fight. So we know that we have, Blade, Diva Bomb, Pulse. We know for sure that they have Tire, like that's guaranteed, and we generally assume that they're going to have Trance do. So this is kind of a play right here that we're trying to bait out the Trance so that we can get a play off.
Okay.
Um, now we get the blade off. They don't have trance. Now this is one of those things where Who Are You tries to dash swipe the tire, but the swipe
The
doesn't go off
ping.
because
Yeah.
so it's kind of unfortunate, but we're still we still have advantage on this. This was one that is kind of interesting because Beast walks out of his bubble trying to finish off the kill and gets domed by the Zen, and then we don't push like we don't because he dies. We lose like our pressure and being able to finish off those kills, so they can come back and EMP trance and win the fight. So like we didn't clean up those kills fast enough, and Beast dying basically like sealed the deal for them to be able to get back trance and EMP.
But now they have no ultimates for their.
No, yeah.
If
So
they
that
lose any fight at this point, it's over.
mhm.
You've got Trance and Primal. Would you be committing both of these ultimates aggressively here?
So that ideally what we're going to do is so let's pause it real quick. So we are going to be primaling aggressively, kind of what I talked about with why we want to go deep with Winston on primal, and then Kraken can make sure our Zen's okay. Now, because we set up our Zen in advance on the high ground, Kraken's main priority, since we don't really have to worry about alarm, we know they don't have EMP, he has trance, Elk can pocket someone else. Kraken then becomes more on we're going to pressure Winston duty. So our Diva goes pressure Winston, Beast Halo wants to go aggressive, and Zach is going to try to capitalize off the space that Beast Halo makes by killing their backline. Now, what goes wrong is Zach and Beast get desynced on their targets, and crucially, Moore doesn't die. And that Moore should have died here, but like the way the positioning happened and the desync on the initial dive means that like Beast's ability to combo him here gets a lot tougher. It's a lot harder for him to make that combo work.
And where is Zachary at this moment in time? Because he should be falling.
You can see him above on top of jail.
Oh,
like
yes.
To the left of the suit.
Yeah, so he's chasing after ZZA while Beast Halo's going after Moore.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so we get kind of desync.
So the desync
Zach actually
isn't on timing; it's on targets.
It's on target. Well, Zach was initially going for more, but got booped up, I believe, or that may be later on. But regardless, it's on targets. Yeah.
Yeah,
I believe Zach was going for.
Where was Zach?
There's the primal. Oh no, there's the boop. He gets booped up, and Zach blinks from second over on top of jail and goes for Z. He gets ZZA, but the Zen doesn't die.
And with the that would have been a sick pulse bomb if it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And even there, you saw that Beast Halo was attacking the Lucio, but not the Zenyatta.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
Zachary was focusing.
Yeah, so he gets the Zen low, and then he uses his like primal jump reset to get out and like live rather than commit on the Zen, which is one of those things where it's like 50-50 whether or not it's the right decision. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. He's probably thinking that Zach's going to finish him off, so he wants to live and then work on the next target. And so that desync is kind of why we lost that fight. There's a lot of things that followed the initial desync. So yeah. So this next fight's going to be pretty hard for us because they have a lot of ults, and they go super aggressive to kill alarm, and then don't. So that's like huge. That's huge. They committed beat, and their monkey died without alarm dying. And
now Trance has been committed while you are... No, sorry. It's the Sombra and the Zen that both had those ults.
Mm-hmm. And so here is a really... Let's rewind it about 5 seconds. This EMP was kind of he waited so long to do this. I think he was wanting to get healed. That's why he waited. But right here, we're still waiting. And so he's like, all right, we're going to go in. And right here, go ahead and pause it right here. So he's now, okay, that's perfect right there. 70. So he's at 74 HP. There's a baby diva. And he doesn't like, ZZA is already dead. He's at 74 HP because he gets hit out of his stealth. And then he EMPs. And neither support die. I don't think alarm dies. Let's play it. So he commits the EMP, boom, and he doesn't even hit alarm because alarm's like not on cart. He's behind, and he gets melee or left click punched by Elk. and were able to clean up the fight because it was an EMP without their team there, or like without everyone there in position. They've now committed their big game winning ult, and now we can just pressure and take the win. So the delay on Mikey going for that play is, I think, what kind of lost it for them, because their team was going in, he's waiting it back to whatever he was doing. I'm curious what their comms looked like there, like what his thoughts were.
Now, Surefour stopped by in chat and just said aggressively Zen ulting and just focusing supports. Saving Primal for afterwards would have been better. Agree? Disagree?
Which scenario are we talking?
I believe not the last fight, but the fight before that.
Aggressively Zen ulting and focusing supports better. For us or for them? I assume he's talking about us. With the fight we lost where the desync happened?
Maybe he can clarify. The one with the target mismatching. So yeah, the one on jail.
Okay. So
I think this is the... Is this not the one? Nope. It's the one before it. Yes, it was here. So this is the one that he's talking about. So in the context of this fight, Surefour is saying aggressively Zen ulting and just focusing supports, then saving Primal for afterwards would have been better. Okay, so let's take a look.
Mm-hmm.
You've got both Primal and Transcendence.
Right here. So our thought process going into it was, we're going to set up our Zen and then hard dive. And then, because they don't have a blade, we should have been more aggressive with how our Zen ulted.
Oh my goodness.
We ended up ulting there on
cart. T2ers to that.
Yeah. It's so hard to see.
No, I T2ers. I was on the wrong scene.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. Give me a second. Give me a second. Okay. It was during this fight here that we're talking about. So Alarm is on the high ground. So he's taking a position on the high ground, like you had mentioned before, so that you don't have to worry about Alarm, right? And then you're using this as kind of like the safety for Alarm, and then going in aggressively with the Primal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, Primal does, in this case, it does end up helping them build Zen ults, but the goal of the fight, like the call that was made, the idea is they kill Zen before he can get damage off. But like, if Zach goes around the backside and focuses Zen and Zen dies, then Zen doesn't get any ult charge. I think so there's a couple ways that we can approach like the VOD review part of this. So go ahead and pause it. So there's like, I can say, we can go in and say like, this would have worked better, and we can look to it in the future. Yeah. But in this case, like when I go in VOD review with my team, I'm going to say, all right, what was the call? What was the plan? And where did we execute incorrectly? Because I want to make sure that part of it is making the right call, yes, but I think more importantly, it's being able to follow up the call that happens and make it work. Is just as important as being able to know what call is the best call to make. So it's a double-sided coin. Do I think that the trance may have worked in this case? Absolutely, it could have. We trance aggressively, we go for sports, and then Primal off card after. In this specific scenario for where the cart has to get to win, absolutely, that's a great play. But as a coach, I'm going to be more concerned about why did this fail for our team? Was it the call was incorrect, or did we misplay the call? So it's both. So yeah, that's why I say it's double.
Okay, Moopy in chat said, I think I heard, words are hard. I think I misheard Mikey saying he didn't want to go, so I went deep without him.
In the last fight? Like the one where Mikey didn't want to go. I think
the one we're talking about, with the same fight with the desync on top of Bank. Maybe I'm misunderstanding? You'll have to clarify there. But then Surefour says, the one with the target mismatching, their Zen has no ult. You guys are up a trank. Winston ulting just helps their Zenyatta build ultimate, and especially when it's uncoordinated. So yeah, his Surefour's argument was basically that um, Beast Halo going in with Primal and not being able to secure that instead of using Trank to finish it off, like hard
Yeah,
committing, gives more his Primal or his Transcendence if he
sure.
wasn't close or
Yeah.
was close.
Mhm.
Man, words are hard. Both are good. Learning what you could have done better in a given situation, and then what could have been better instead. So you can learn from both sides and adapt later on. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
The fight we beated and I just fed, it was before the EMP. Oh, yeah, he's talking about the one where they
Oh,
went in and
okay.
okay, yep.
Makes sense. I see.
So Mickey didn't want to go in. Let's I don't remember where that one is. Was it the one right before this?
Uh, I, let's see. I think it's right after.
No, this is too early. Yeah, it's right after. You're correct. It's right after this that the
Yeah.
so at this point, Moopy is saying that he heard Mikey saying he didn't want to go in, so Moopy goes in deep and then ends up getting punished for it.
Hmm. Yeah. So it's right after this.
Because Paintbrush will be getting his barrier, and they'll be hard engaging with that.
Hmm. So this is where.
Yeah, and we saw Mikey translocate out like 4 seconds ago or something like that, so he's definitely
Hmm.
not in a position to assist this dive.
Yeah, right here. So yeah, so that's a desync. That's unfortunate on their part.
And then the EMP, like we talked about,
Yep.
it's taken out by Elk.
The EMPs. So yeah, that's kind of our Hollywood. We've definitely got like this will be good for us to go over and review on like different scenarios. Like just the example of what Surefour said when we review it together. That's kind of like when we do VOD reviews. Like I mentioned before, I like to enable our players to be able to give their thoughts if they think something could have been better, and then we talk about it and we like see how do we make it work? Was this better? All the different sides of it, and then come together in a conclusion of like, all right, this is how we do it in the future. Um, so yeah, Hollywood
And
is good, and then
you wanted to look at Lunar as well, correct?
yep, yeah, and so Horizon we can do fairly quickly.
Well, that's fine. Take your time. I got food, so I'm good.
Yeah,
I started almost 8 hours ago now, so I got some grub into me, and we are happy. Fusion Uni, there we go. And Horizon was which one? Last one, I believe. Yes, it's this one.
all right, so one of the things we got asked here, I got asked afterwards, was asking about why we would play Ana in this scenario. And against Mayhem, uh, so they're on attack first, and we know from watching them that they're going to be playing one of two comps. Either A, they're going to be playing this comp where they just run a dive, try to get in the back line and focus supports, because if you can, depending on where the supports are positioned, you can push them off high ground, collapse on them while they're in transition to wherever their next setup point is, or they're going to be running tanks and trying to pull the fight to point and force us to play on point. Since if you're outside of point trying to look in, it gets kind of awkward for dive comp. So we opt for the Ana for two reasons. So one, we want to pressure early with our tanks, and so because we want to keep like the tank pressure in our favor with healing, we can use that to pocket a tank in bullying and chokes and whatnot. And then the second point is that with the bio nade, if it's tanks, they're going to be clumped, and we can get a big nade engage off of that. Or alternatively, we can, whoever's being focused, you nade, and then the Moira is basically not effective. We can hack, nade, discord, and that target's going to die. So there's a couple different reasons why. There's a couple different ways that you can play it here. This is the way that we opted to play against Mayhem. So yes, that's kind of like our thought process here, and like the whole point of bullying early and pressuring early is that we want to make them uneasy about engaging ever, because no tank wants to go in at lower health than the other tanks, especially if they're half health and feel like they're just going to die on impact. So our goal is pressure them early to where they are uneasy about finding their engagement and going. So that's why the Ana's in play, so we can play.
Now, on a bit of a tangent here, you're running a
Okay.
composition here, which have you seen any other Contenders or Overwatch League team run this exact comp on Horizon Defense?
We've seen it a couple times.
So it has been played by other teams.
It has been, but the vast majority of teams are playing a risk. And we felt like in this situation that the way that their tanks play, and like our biggest concern against Mayhem Academy is if they can win off like an EMP play or Mikey getting some long flank and surprising us, with a pulse bomb stick or something. That's like the way that we think Mayhem Academy has won most of their fights in Contenders. And so we feel like in the tank to tank matchup, in the pre-fight, we can bully them and make them uneasy about diving. And if they do dive, their tanks die. If they don't dive, they waste time. So that's kind of like our mindset going forward. We have the Zen for tank damage with Discord, and then the Ana to keep our tanks up, and then hit a nade depending on the.
Now, taking this tangent to even further, let's do you remember when Dallas Fuel ran their May Bastion Reinhardt strategy on King's Row A attack?
Mm-hmm.
Are you ever kind of worried about running an experimental composition for the first time in public like this with Contenders or Overwatch League, or if the scrim results speak for themselves? Sometimes I guess if a strategy you want to keep it secret until you actually debut it, you don't want to leak your strat in scrim or anything. Are you ever worried about a strategy just completely failing and making you look silly, or what the heck were they thinking here? So again, Anazen, not really that traditional on Horizon, but as you said, other teams have done it. But in terms of looking back at the Dallas Fuel with their their May Bastion Reinhardt attack strat on King's Row, is that anything you're worried about? Do you ever run into the situation where you can't test something in scrims and you have to try it for the first time in a real game? And if so, what are the pressures kind of surrounding that?
I try to avoid that as much as we can we'll first talk about this specific scenario. In this specific scenario, we've done this a lot in scrims, and we're not foreign to this. This isn't new for us. So we know the ins and outs of how we need to play this. In terms of doing another comp experimentally, if it's something that the style is similar to what we've done before with a minor tweak, then I'm confident we can make that call to go for it if we haven't played it before. But if it's one where we have to do something where the win condition is something we haven't practiced a lot or have a good foundation on, then I generally am not going to want to do it in a match. So it largely depends on if the win condition and the style is similar to things that we're already good at, then I'm fine going for it.
Okay. Let me know when you want to pause.
I'll go for it. So they're grouping up. And we actually decloak their Sombra early, so they have to wait further. Mikey's in the back. And so this is what we're talking about, kind of what we were expecting, where they're trying to get around and get a long flank. So we're just going to pressure him. And the whole point is we just want to delay them as long as we can. And so that's, our front line with Ana Zen can handle, being in a 4v5 because we have so much healing. And
especially since their tracer is separated from their tanks, right?
Exactly.
There's nothing even remotely pressuring your tanks.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we're just going to keep this going as long as we can. Here, we actually hit a solid nade. In that corner, it's really easy to hit nades. So we hit it and we force them back and they can't engage off of it, and we end up getting Mikey A. And so now there's, like we said before, we're pressuring them enough to where they're uneasy about engaging. And that's kind of a thing that we want to exploit in tanks that we feel are weaker than in a situation like this. So, so our Onizing got forced off the high ground. We're just going to do the same thing where we have good sight lines and pressure them at chokes.
Now, I was going to ask, I paused, it's just a frame too late. I was going to ask in the same kind of situation where, if you EMP a Zarya who has Grav, they're going to have it for next fight. For Zachary here, would he be waiting to EMP based off Coalescence being popped, knowing that that's going to be the first ult coming up for the Mayhem? Or would he EMP aggressively when he has it just as soon as possible?
So in this scenario, it's more that we want to make sure that we're in a position to get as much value out of it as we can for us. So in that situation, it's regardless of whether or not they pop Coalescence, it's can we get an EMP that hits, the Monkey, the Diva, and the supports to where we can hit a nade and then engage off of them not having any healing or mobility at all. So that's kind of what we're looking for with this EMP. It helps that they already popped Coalescence.
It helps quite a bit, yes.
Yeah, and so that's kind of our condition is we're just going to pressure. They're going to come in. We're going to find the EMP, look for nade, and then we're going to use it based on what we feel is the strongest scenario for us, not necessarily reactively in this.
EMP, no nade.
So we go. And so we take out tanks first.
Now that EMP, why was that EMP unsuccessful? Like, unless I'm misinterpreting, why did that EMP fail? Where's my mouse?
Yeah, so so we'll go back a little bit. There's a couple of reasons. So firstly, you can pause it right when he EMP.
Okay. Hey Dio, good to see you. And boom.
So boom. All right. So let's see how many people actually got EMP. The Diva, the Moira,
and the Tracer,
the Sombra, and the Tracer. Their Lucio did not get EMP'd, and our tanks are not at choke anymore. They got pushed back, and I'm not sure where our Ana is, but the nade doesn't come through, and that's kind of a big deal. So whether that's
now, what would have prevented the nade from coming through here?
Either he is hiding from LOS from somebody, which he probably isn't, or he used it to heal tanks if he felt like he needed to burst heal tanks. There could be a number of reasons why it didn't come through, or it could be that he throws it and it gets eaten by by someone standing in front of him when he throws it.
Yeah, like body blocks the grenade. Yes.
Yeah. So with this angle, because the point kind of is up a little bit from where he's standing, because he's standing back near the mini. It's not as easy to hit the nade because he has to arc it upwards rather than going from top down because we got pushed off the high ground. So
Elk just mentioned in chat that he used it to save Beast at the choke because he was going to die.
Yep.
So a question from the chat: is saving EMP to counter sound barrier ever a viable tactic?
Sure. So we have, if you're going to do that, you have to know that sound barrier has to be their win condition. So I could try to construct a situation where that's the case, but in general, there's two schools of thought when it comes to Sombra. Either A, you go very aggressively, or you go very passively. And if you're doing passive plays, it means you're using EMP to counter. You're using hacks to counter incoming dives. It's basically like a peel style. You're using it to prevent damage rather than prevent them from preventing damage. So you think of it like that way. Either you're preventing damage from coming through, or you're preventing them from preventing damage. So if we're going aggressive with this, we want to make sure that we're making the most out of our offensive capability. Whereas if you are going to save it for sound barrier, then it needs to be a situation where you are playing passively enough to where beat becomes one of their main win.
Okay, let's keep going.
There's that. We hit the Nano Winston. And then Winston's just gonna hard focus their backline and try to build his ult. So he has his ult now, and then now he's gonna. This is what I'm talking about. With Beast is actually pretty good about using his primal combos.
Beast's primal control has always been awesome.
Yeah, and so we're obviously this specific play didn't go like we wanted to. Things happen. That's the way Overwatch goes. A lot of times your strats don't work out for one reason or another. Either you have to blow cooldown early to save somebody. Either someone mistimed something. Whatever. So we end up investing more than we want to, but our strategy remains the same. So we're just going to reset and try to get in position.
And you know that neither of them have their support ultimates here, so it's a lot better for you than it could have been.
Yeah, exactly. And they're actually looking for Zen, and Alarm's hiding in space. And he actually kills Mike Ye in the 1v1.
Alarm, just doing alarm things.
Yep. And so they reset because they lost the 1v1. They didn't have a coordinated dive. Like this was, this is the style that we're going for with this. We want to make their engagements uneasy. If it's whether they're not a confident team or whatever, that's why we're playing this comp, is to make things uneasy and make their dives awkward.
What team was Alarm on before you picked him up?
He was on Lunatic High, and before that he was on BK Stars. So there's the EMP. He literally only hits D.Va.
Didn't he hit the monkey behind him as well?
Did he? I may have missed that. He may have.
Yeah, I think the monkey was behind him as well, which is why he did it.
And then Alarm 1v1's the Tracer again in space. Yeah, so he hits the monkey too. Yeah, you're right. So he hits both tanks, but they can't capitalize on it. Elk dies. They find whether that's Elk overextending. I'm not really sure because it's hard to tell. And then
Elk always overextends.
I hope that we can get top downs from all these maps.
Wouldn't that
eventually.
be awesome? Man, there's so much. Like they could do so much to improve the analytics work, or just coaching of Overwatch, because we do really kind of have to work with scraps, don't we?
Yeah. Yep. And then Beast gets primal again. And
I'm not sure what happened to Who Are You there.
Oh, I believe so. If you go back, I believe this was actually one that he
tries to go up the stairs, and then I think he just misses the stairs.
Yeah, he tried to blink onto the stairs, and he ends up missing.
Okay, so this next fight coming up, you're not going to have EMP, and it looks like whatever ult rotation you were working with is currently out of sync. So what is your win condition here?
So it's actually went out of sync from the very first fight.
Oh, did it? I must have not been paying attention then.
Yeah. So we ended up committing 5 on the very first fight. So we just go and you treat it like it's the first fight, where this is our win condition, what we have to do if we don't have ults. And so we end up doing that and getting a couple fights where they have these really weird engagements and don't really focus, and we're able to capitalize off that. And then this fight, they have to rush to point. And so we know that, even if we don't have these big ults, we can just play proper focus, play our normal positioning, and be able to capitalize on them not being able to have a structured dive, and just find isolated targets or overextended targets that are trying to touch point, focus point, and take them out one at a time.
Now, that looked very, very well done. Now, knowing that is this map the one that you draw?
No, we didn't draw any.
Why was the score 3-0?
Because we cap it here and then we win 3. So semifinal or quarterfinals is a best of 5, not a best of 4. Yeah.
Oh.
So this is
I didn't realize that I didn't realize it changed for playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So we only need 1 tick, which we, like before, on these map pools, we're expecting them to play Orisa again, just like most of the teams are. So what we're going to do is, just like we did against the other tank comps, we are going to get to point and force them to transition. Now, because it's 1 tick, it makes it extra stressful from Mayhem Academy's side.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to force them to transition and then try to hit them in transition. So a couple of things that we can do, depending on who contests point, whatever. Either A, we can look for a hack Discord and whoever's in the backline can go, B, we can wait to when they're going from the top down into that little stairwell. We can look for a nade. There's a couple of nade spots that you can throw for main, and try to engage off of a big biotic nade. Or we can just, whoever ends up coming point, we can take angles and just do our normal spread out, take angles, build ults, all that kind of thing. So just like we treated all the other comps, just we're moving it to this point and trying to utilize a bio nade now instead of a speed boost sound barrier. So you're going to see our backline get in position to go to point and force them to come down. We're biding our time. Who are you still on point? Someone's contesting him there. I'm not sure. I assume it's the Tracer.
Yeah, it's
So our tanks
unfortunate that it's unfortunate that the Sombra had to translocate out based on the shot from Zen there, or else that.
So if you go back,
go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. So if you go back here, right after Zach translocates out, he gets hit there. Translocates out.
Yeah, I was just saying that like this translocator would have like with Zachary and who are you on the point, Mikey wouldn't have been able to contest solo, or else he would have gotten hacked or just like get 2v1'd. So
yeah,
with Zachary's translocator forced to be used, basically Mikey can contest who are you with the support of more in order to prevent the rotation from actually occurring. So this translocator is actually pretty devastating to your, unless I'm misinterpreting this, but the
no, that's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah, so because of where Zach translocated to, he can still follow up on the back end of the fight, which is kind of why he goes down here. Because our tanks are going to go under wrap around, and we're going to hit one of those nades, and then we're just going to hard focus the support from behind. And then because they're not playing Widow, one of those things that we kind of shouted because we know they're not going to play Widow is our tanks or our supports can sit in main uncontested, and just be able to free heal or free damage from main. And so that's kind of one of those things where not being able to play Widow, we can take advantage of that with how our support's position. And so it's hard to tell because of the camera work, but that's kind of the reason why we did the Ana and do this style. If you play it out, you'll see, I believe the Zen ends up dying to the nade, and we're able to commit off of it.
Let's keep going then.
Here, our tanks are under, and they're going to wrap. Our supports are sitting in main, and then tanks go around, and we hit
don't you? Right there.
Yep, I'm right there. So that's a preset plan that we knew playing against that comp that we could run, and so now we can just put our 2 on the point, 2 to 3 on the point, and then pressure the other ones. They still have to have someone touching the point at all times. Our supports are still uncontested in main, and they can just do whatever they want. So,
and hopefully they want to heal. Oh man, I'm glad you picked that one. That was a really that was a really interesting one to look at. Good choice.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to go over it. It's cool. It was a cool way that we could counter strat what we were expecting from.
Yeah, I wouldn't have expected to see the Zen Ana, especially on Horizon defense, but you pulled it off.
And that's a situation where Elk and I talk a lot about strategy and ways that we can manipulate and exploit people. So that's a great example of one of those scouting things that between he and I, we can. And don't get me wrong, everyone else contributes as well. I say Elk because the channel here likes him a lot and he's in chat. So it's cool. It's a cool thing to be able to have a team of guys that think like we do, and the foundation that we set to build to go off of.
I didn't miss your sleeps there, Elk. Your Ana play put me to sleep. Tisk tisk. People are exciting. Yeah, that's. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Open floor, pretty much.
I think I hit pretty much everything. I hit a lot of the mentality and philosophy stuff about earlier, and then some of the strategy stuff and the way the teams work, stuff to do as coaches. So thanks for having me on. I don't know if there's any other questions or anything, whatever you want to do.
You were so in depth and thorough. I am honestly going to have to rewatch this at least because, yeah, I think there's a lot to be picked out of this. I want to rewatch, just kind of listen to a lot of your detail or
Sure.
answers more in depth. I'll probably look at some of these VODs, but I really truly appreciate you being so open with how you work with the Fusion University, the strategies, and really gives us a great insight into the higher level Overwatch that is so rare. So many coaches and analysts in the Overwatch League and the Overwatch Contenders are extremely shadowy or secretive about what they exactly do. So for you to
Sure.
take what is essentially a risk, you're giving away your trade secrets by coming on here,
Yeah.
is I really truly appreciate it, and I know the vast majority of chat appreciated it as well. So
Good.
thank
Yeah.
you very
Thanks
much.
for
I
yeah.
appreciate
Like
yes.
yeah. Thanks for having me on. I do really appreciate it. And like I said before, I want to see the Overwatch scene grow, and I want to see coaches grow, and more coaches come into the scene. A lot of the contenders teams that are out there right now, some of them don't even have coaches. I want to be able to help build this part of the scene. And so if there's ever anything that people need, want to learn or whatever, I can't always get to all the questions that people ask me on Twitter or whatever, but I'm more than happy to try. Yeah. So thanks for having me, and thanks for what you do here. I think it's great for the scene. So yeah.
I'll try and keep improving. I it's I always kind of it's so hard to find the resources that you really need to, improve your craft to get to the point where you feel qualified to teach or coach at the Contenders level, let alone the Overwatch League
Right.
level. And I always feel rather competent and knowledgeable of the game until I talk to either you or Elk. You, you two just make me feel just stupid. It's amazing. So it's kind of it's inspiring and motivational to keep working because I have not reached the top of the mountain and there's a lot more to go. And the top of the mountain's in a cloud. I don't know where it is. I don't know what's involved, but it's exciting nonetheless to try and climb up there. So,
Definitely.
um, I'm not even. Had such a long question period. I'm not going to go over it again. Just one
Cool.
last time, where people can follow you. Your Twitter, your Twitch. I know you're not streaming a lot these days because you are so involved in Fusion University, but just a shout out to who you are and where people can follow you after this stream concludes.
Yep. So my Twitter is twitter.com/Aero_OW. Shoot me a follow. I do post a lot on there. When I do stream, it's Arrowing Gaming. I do try to stop in all of our guys' streams once in a while, so you can talk to me there. Usually in there. So yeah, and also follow the Fusion Uni Twitter and the Philadelphia Fusion. A lot of our stuff goes on there as well. So yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Are any of the Fusion University guys streaming right now so I can pass the host?
Good question. Let me look.
Also, Aero is going to be going for the Overwatch World Cup coach position for Team USA. So once the voting starts, not next week, but the week after, right? 2 weeks from now?
I believe so, something like that.
So 2 weeks from now, vote Aero, Overwatch World Cup coach for Team USA.
Aero. Yeah. Thank you. I think the only university I'm streaming right now is actually Round, our sub, so I can hit you that.
Sure. If you just type it
Appreciate
to
it.
me in Discord, I'll pass it over to him. Awesome. Well, thanks for watching, guys. This segment will definitely be going up on YouTube, probably sometime middle of the week here, because we'll, of course, have to edit it. But once again, thanks, Aero. Thanks, chat. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm going to lay down and get some food in me, because that was a very long stream, but very educational, and I look forward to the rewatch. Cheers, Aero. Thanks for coming on.
Cheers. Yep. Thanks.
I fucking lied. I'm still here. Pugs are going live on the Discord. So if you want to do pickup games, just it's the competitive format in a custom game where you can play with people. No one tricks, no throwers, or anything like that. Not gonna risk your SR. Can practice all the shit that you just heard us talk about on the Discord. If you're not on the Discord, !Discord, hop on. Let's play some pugs. I'm gonna join after food. I'm actually getting out of here now. Bye.